You'll see the light come on, Andy. So halfway on. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order at 6:32. Just a brief little statement on the meeting. So we are streaming the meeting tonight. It's a one-way stream, so you guys can see us, hopefully hear us okay. You won't be able to communicate back to us like you have in the past when you were in school. This is the plan going forward. So if you have public comment, you'll want to come to the meeting if possible. You can also email the board ahead of time and ask that your comments be read at the meeting. That's perfectly acceptable as well. But this is what we're doing for now. We should have captioning, I believe, on the meeting. If there's any hard of hearing folks, so you can do that. So this is kind of the new format, and so I'm excited that I do not have to read the emergency declaration tonight. So the first thing we need to do before we move any further is reorganization of the board. If you tuned in last time, you'll know that we had an election, so we need to reappoint officers and whatnot. We did a couple of them because we had to have our meeting, but the rest of our committee seats are currently technically unfilled. So we'll go ahead. Would you guys like me to read each one of them, or and we could go through one by one, and whoever's doing it now, whoever has done it for the past year, can give a little bit of blurb, like how much time it took them, that sort of thing, and then we can see who's interested and right. Yeah. So the first one is the Municipal Budget Committee representative. I did that last year. I did the year before. I enjoy it. It's probably a big reason that I joined the board, just to be involved in that conversation and crunch the numbers. It's something that I got a degree in math, so it's something that I can have some sort of expertise in. It is very, very time intensive for a few months of the year. Meetings fire up in October. It's not terribly time consuming for us then, other than meetings. But those meetings are generally focused on areas of the town outside of the school until December-ish. At that point, it gets, it gets a little bit more, you're in communication a lot with the committee chair, sometimes the select board or the moderator. And so it's kind of facilitating the conversation between the municipal budget committee and the school. And then kind of historically, that's the person that at the school district meeting would give a little bit of a presentation and kind of answer any questions the public might have about the schools and budget. For what it's worth, happy to do it again.
So I will nominate Andy as the I'd like to nominate Andy to return in the role as NBC rep.
I'll second.
I'll accept the nomination. Is there any other nominees? Amy, just to check, can you still hear us okay?
I can still hear you loud and clear. And I'm not sure, are we doing roll call voting with me calling in, or how are we going to do that?
Yeah, I think we might as well just do it. So,
Okay, thanks.
all right, well, there's a second, so we'll go ahead and call it. To reappoint Andy as the NBC representative. Jean?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Andy, are we going to announce that maybe it is?
Yes, good point. So in case anybody outside is wondering, Amy is joining us remotely tonight. There are rules that allow for that. We have to have a quorum here in person, which we do, but Amy is joining us remotely. So just in case anybody's wondering why she sounds different or you can't see her. Thank you for that.
Actually, Andy, I am signed into the WebEx, so if anyone wants to see my smiling face,
Okay.
the people that are also signed in can see me.
I see you over there now. Okay, the next one is NBC alternate. So this was Jean for the past couple of years. So what can you talk about?
Pretty much, it was pretty much straightforward. I had to step in a couple of times that Andy couldn't be at the NBC meeting. Fortunately, it was in the early stages, and I didn't have to get into too much detail on too many things. So it was, like Andy said, it was kind of laid back early, and then as it moved on, it got a lot more intense. Meetings got longer, so yeah, it was fine. And, you know, I'd be happy to do it again. If anyone want to nominate me?
This is April. I'll nominate Jean as the NBC alternate.
Right.
I'll second. Okay, so this is April.
All right.
I know that.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Is there any other conversation around NBC alternate? Great, then on a roll call vote to appoint Jean to that role. Amy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
and yes. Great. Next is maintenance slash facilities. I don't know if this one gained a lot of traction, but it was Amy, so Amy, you can tell us what you know.
I would like to continue doing that.
Can you give us an idea of what the time was like and what it kind of entailed?
I didn't do a single thing, and I would like, I'd like to change that this year.
Okay.
As you know, last year was very COVID focused, so I volunteered for this, looking to work on sustainability issues, first to learn what the state of the facilities is, and then maybe to see if I can bring some improvement, and I am very eager to work on that.
Okay. Any other discussion, conversation, motions, nominations?
Make a motion to appoint Amy.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to appoint Amy to that role. Is there any conversation? Trying to speak loud enough. I hope everybody can hear everybody. Okay, then on a roll call vote to reappoint Amy as maintenance and facilities liaison. What was it, Jean?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes. On board. Next is the SHU exec board rep, and Suzanne.
The exec board meets, probably maybe 3 or 4 times a year, maybe 5. It's on a Wednesday afternoon, so, it's a great meeting to meet all the other representatives of all the other districts. So I would like to stay in that position.
Questions or nominations?
I would nominate Ann to continue on as the SAU exec board rep.
I'll second that.
Right, so we got a motion or a nomination and a second for Ian to remain in that role. Any conversation? Perfect. Roll call vote. We'll go backwards. Amy?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And yes. That's the CIP. That's been Jean for a couple of years, right?
I've done it over 3 years now, I think. Did I do it? No, just 2. Anyway, it's generally runs during the summer months, July, August, and into September. Meets once a week or so. We tour different facilities around the town, see what the needs are in each one of the departments, and bring that to into a report form, and then that in turn is turned into the MDC for the budget process. It's a little bit of time, a couple hours once a week over the summer, which for me was fine. And you do learn a lot about the town, the inner workings of the town on this. I'd be happy to continue in that position, but don't want to preclude anyone else from checking that out too. So,
Okay. Any other interest, nominations, conversations?
I'll nominate Jean.
I'll second.
All right, so a nomination and a second for Dean to return to CIP. We'll roll call vote. Dean?
yes.
April?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes. Good. Ann was our PA scholarship person.
Yeah, that was done a little bit differently because of COVID, but, that was pretty interesting to be part of, even though it wasn't a lot of, work or interactive. I still would be able to assist in that position.
That was fun. I did that the prior year. It was interesting.
Yeah, I did it 1 year also, and it was eye-opening, and I can't remember, Dr. Morse, who is the, I think, guidance counselor?
Barbara Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, she knew I mean, literally everything about every kid on that list, so it was pretty impressive.
I think maybe, I didn't want to speak out of turn, but maybe Amy would like to try, if we've all had a spot.
Amy, are you interested in that?
Yeah, actually, my dad was a high school lacrosse coach for a long time, and there was a foundation set up in his memory, and I did this. We decided who to give scholarships to, and really enjoyed it. I like being connected a little bit closer with the students, so I would love to do that.
I'll nominate you.
All right.
Second?
Okay, so we've got a nomination and a second for Amy to be PA scholarship person. Last time, so Amy,
Yes.
Ian,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
and I'm yes. It's easier for me to remember the order. Manifest review. So we had April and Amy for the past year. I think everybody's done that or close to it, or well, maybe Ann hasn't, but you understand the process.
Yeah, I was gonna, nominate myself for that.
Okay.
I'll second that. I've done that for 2 years, so if anyone's interested in trying that hasn't.
Okay. Amy, your thoughts on it?
I'm fine with, Ann and April swapping out, no problem there. I would prefer myself to continue. I still feel like I have a lot to learn about being a school board member, and signing off on those every week is very instructional.
I'd like to nominate Amy.
We got a nomination and a second for Amy, so we'll take that one first.
And was,
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's it. Okay, so, well, let's take them one at a time. So we'll do Amy. So Jean,
yes.
April,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So we got Amy, and then Ann was also nominated, and I don't. Did you get who the second is? Okay.
Ann and Amy. I did.
All right. So then Amy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Jean.
Yep.
And yes. Excellent. We're getting there. The AREA advisory board. This has 3 on it. It's got April, Ann, and Amy. If anybody wants to describe it, just jump in.
I think it's really interesting to see how they're going forward, to open up the agreement, right? Actually understand what's in the agreement, and the other districts getting more, basically more say in what's going on and being heard. I think it's really important. I think we really had a lot of input from other districts this year, and I think they felt that they were heard.
Are the 3 of you that were doing it, would you all prefer to continue?
I'm not going to be able to because that's on Wednesdays, and the selectmen have now changed to Wednesday night.
Okay.
So I would miss the first half hour of it. So I don't think I can do it.
This is Amy. I can continue.
I would be interested in continuing, but I also don't want to stop anyone else who may have interest. I've done this for 2 years.
Okay.
So I would be willing to decide if we would.
Yeah, I would be happy to take Ann's spot, and it's not something that I have a particular interest in, so Dean, if you want to just say so, but I only have a couple of appointments, and I mean, they're big time consuming ones, but sometimes I look at this list and see my name only a couple times and think I'm not holding my weight, and that one's not a super intense one. There's not a ton of meetings, so I'd be happy to do that.
I think you might find it interesting this year.
Yeah, amen.
So, yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to do it. So,
Okay, well, Amy said she'd like to continue, right?
I nominate Amy for the ARE board.
I'll second.
All right, so let's do Amy quick. So Dean,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So we got Amy. Read this. All right, any other nominations?
So,
I mean, I can do it if we need another spot and no one else is interested in taking it. I just don't want to prohibit someone else from doing it if there's interest. So I am willing to continue, but if someone else should like to be in that spot, I'm okay with that.
I got your nomination done.
Okay.
I nominate April.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, so nomination is second for April. Any discussion? All right, Jean,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
yes. Okay, I think 1 more.
Then I'll nominate Andy.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on that? So nomination in a second for Andy. Amy?
Yes.
If?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Gene?
Yes.
Yes. Mayor School Board Association delegate. April, this was you?
Right. So I've done this for 2 years. I've enjoyed it. It's, we do have an annual meeting of the school board delegates that we attend. As you guys recently recall, there was feedback given on how to vote on resolutions. And one reason that I like this is because I do have young children, and this is kind of a one-time commitment. It's something that I can do based on my schedule and family needs. I would be interested in continuing because so far I only have one other assignment, but at the same time, if someone else is interested, I'm going to step aside.
Any particular interest in this one?
I'm nominated.
Can I just, thank you, before, I just want to say that anyone else can attend the meeting, but we only get one vote. So if any other school board members are interested in attending, you can attend, but we only get one vote. And that's all.
That's what I was gonna ask, because I attended last time, just to hear that.
Okay, so there's a nomination for April.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a second. Any conversation? All right. Gene?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Yes. Negotiations team. So this has been Gene and Amy for the past year.
I think this year is going to be kind of quiet on that front.
In theory, I think the teacher's contract expires in 23 and the parents' contract expires in 22.
The Paris contract will be voted on
Oh,
Right, so is that,
this year, and so this team would also do any negotiations for any
Grievances.
memo of understandings or anything that comes up in between when contracts are actually negotiated.
I would be interested in doing on the team.
I'll nominate Ann,
all right,
negotiation team.
I'll second.
all right. Any conversation? All right, so nomination for Ann. Amy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Gene? Yes. Yes.
And I'm interested in continuing.
I nominate Amy.
I'll second.
That was quick. Okay, we got a nomination and a second. Any discussion? Great. Gene?
Yes.
April?
Yeah.
Ann?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Those. Who left? Pace board. This has been Amy and Gene's been the alternate. Amy, do you want to give us an idea of how much time this one is?
Yeah, I think it's quarterly meetings, so it's not a very big time commitment. I'm happy to continue. I'm just as happy to give someone else an opportunity.
April, you've done this one before, right?
I have, but I wasn't really able to fulfill my obligation. I did not.
Okay. And Gene did this.
Done it twice. Well, once in the alternate, once in. So, yeah, it's, I mean, the meetings are a couple hours long. So it's not a big deal. So, and the next one's coming up in May. Yeah.
Anybody else that would particularly like to do this one?
Did we hear that Amy would like to continue?
She said she would really.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Amy for this board.
I'll second.
All right, so we got a nomination and a second for Amy to continue on pace board. For Amy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Gene,
Yes.
and yes. And Gene, do you have interest in continuing?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Is anybody else interested in being the alternate?
Jean, what did you have?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll nominate.
I'll second.
Perfect. So we got our nomination and a second for Gene as the alternate for pace board. Gene?
Yeah.
April?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes. Fantastic. The last one is hill expansion. And in my conversations with Mr. Foss, they have wrapped up and are basically ready to present. So, pleasure of the board, I guess, but I don't know if this needs to continue, Patty, from your point of view. We keep this in case it ramps up. Okay. I'm happy to continue. It's been something since even before I was on the board. I was on the committee around village school, which I think is why I stepped up for this one last year. I took a very hands-off approach purposefully because I didn't want board influence on people, looking into this. But happy to do it and get back involved. But if anybody has an interest, that's 100% fine too. I'm not married to it.
I'll nominate him.
Second that.
All right, so there's a nomination, a second for Andy. Conversation. Okay, Amy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Gene,
Yes.
and yes. So we made it. Hope someone's mistaken that, but I wasn't. Okay, phew. Oh, a lot of votes, real fast. Okay, so agenda item number 2 is agenda review. Patty, do you have anything?
Yes, so we need to add one more consent item, so there will be 2 consent under number 5. We need to have a non-meeting at the end of this meeting for negotiations. And I would recommend, Mr. Seraphin, our moderator is here, and I would recommend that we move him up to the next agenda item if the board is okay with that.
Okay,
Oh, thanks, yeah.
everybody okay with moving the school district meeting conversation up to number 3 and pushing everything down now?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll move on to
Oh,
new.
sorry, Andy, before we move forward, it just said it needed to go into non-public session. Would we possibly be able to go into non-public based on small letter C matters which if discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than the member of the board?
Yeah, if you do an item.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, on agenda review?
Yep.
7D, school board goals.
Yep.
I wanted to see if we could put superintendent goals there also.
Sure, I think that might be, so that I think, yes,
Is it all right?
we'll talk about it. I don't think we're going into even the school board goals in depth tonight. I think that we put it down there so that we can, I think basically what we need to do is schedule another meeting for it. But we'll talk about the same thing at the same time.
Thank you.
Remind me though, I'll forget.
Okay.
I'll write it on my list. Okay, everybody good? Fantastic. Then we'll move on to new agenda item number 3, which used to be 7A, the school district meeting. We've got our moderator, Tom Seraphin, here with us today. Patty, do you want to start the conversation?
Sure, so, so we invited Mr. Seraphin because he is our school district moderator, and we thought that we should talk about a few things in order to get ready for our May meeting. I think we need to reaffirm that the board's intention, if it is the board's intention to apply the mask policy to the school district meeting. We also need to discuss the fact that we'll have 3 locations, which means that we need to have a deputy moderator, which falls into Mr. Seraphin's lap to nominate someone. So I thought we should have that conversation and see if there's a plan in place to do that, or if we can offer any assistance. And then any other housekeeping items anyone could think about for the May meeting, just to be ready for it.
Okay. So I guess the easy question for us then before we pull down in, I guess we need to make a decision on masks. I think we just have an open conversation about that.
What I would come forward with is that we follow whatever guidance or emergency order may or may not be in place. If the mask requirement is rescinded from our governor, I feel like that is something that we should also do. But if the mask order is still in place, I feel like we should follow it. And that's where I sit on that matter. I mean, we're talking, we don't really know what's going to happen. I know we're less than a month out now, so we're not really sure what's going to happen between now and then.
I think I generally agree with the possible stipulation that if what we decided for the students in the school happened to be different than the mask mandate or unmandated or whatever, I think I would lean towards whatever we're telling teachers and students they have to do while they're in our building is what I would prefer to do in our building. But I think that will basically line up with what you're saying anyway. Depending on even when it was rescinded, and when we have a meeting to make the decision.
Yeah, this is Amy. I'm in favor of applying the mask policy to the district meeting, whatever the mask policy may be. I do think it's unlikely that before the district meeting, we're going to have the governor rescind the mask mandate, and we're going to have a school board meeting where we change or rescind our mask policy. But if those two things were to happen, then that updated, rescinded, whatever status can apply to our district meeting. Alternatively, I do wonder about just declaring today that masks will be required at the district for purposes of clarity. You know, I do think that we might maybe be setting ourselves up for like a last minute scramble and confusion about like, what is the status? So those are my thoughts.
This is more of a question, and I don't know if this is more directed to our moderator, but can we actually prevent someone from voting if they're not wearing a mask? And that's my concern, because we come to the townwide school district meeting to vote. Can we legally deny someone their right to vote and participate in a townwide meeting because they're not wearing a mask?
So as I understand it, and Todd, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and when Patty kind of mentioned deputy moderators and different locations, I think what our attorney kind of pointed out, I don't remember what at this point, was that if we were going to require masks, and we want to plan a contingency for people to wear them for medical reasons or whatever reasons. And I think if I understood it correctly, that would mean there would be a remote location still in this building, but separate from the main location, whatever that might be. So if the main location is the auditorium, there may also be chairs set up just like this with a deputy moderator that Mr. Server has chosen here. There would have to be video capabilities to make it basically real-time communication both ways so that it's just like you're really there. But we could have a location like that where masks were off. I think that's the only way to do it. You probably read more about it than I have, Tom.
No, you're essentially spot on. You cannot legally keep anyone from voting, but you're absolutely empowered to keep them sequestered from everyone else, which is what we did at the primary general election. To be honest with you, the town meeting, and I'm not sure if I signed anyone besides Ann.
Everybody had a mask on.
Yeah, there was literally more than people there, but and the voting this year at time elections, general election, we had maybe a half a dozen people challenge the mask mandate, and that was over 4,500. Time election, we didn't have a single person attempt to vote without a mask. So, my opinion is that it really isn't an issue.
Non-issue, sorry, just to clarify, non-issue to have a mask policy or not an issue?
So in terms of the people challenging, and then to participate without a mask, that's an issue.
Okay.
We haven't seen it in 3 elections or the district or the county.
So that's not something that really concerns you right now. But we do need to make some sort of plan for those who may wish not to wear masks.
Yes.
Okay.
And there should be a special, I mean, if it was the gymnasium and there's a corner that was designated for.
At this point in time, we have what, 3 locations?
Yes.
So I think at that point, it'd be fairly easy to sequester that group if it even exists. Forward and just, enforce our mask policy as we have it right now, unless, like April said, something changes along the way here, which it seems unlikely at this point.
Yeah, I to piggyback on that, and I guess what Amy said, I would say, obviously everything is heading in the right direction, but I think for clarity, I think we should say tonight that there's masks are required at this meeting. And if we decide that we want to change that later, it's going to be a lot easier to say, hey, no, never mind, we're good, than it is to say tonight masks are optional, and then get 3 weeks down the road and be like, no, that was a mistake, go the other way. You'll never reverse course in that direction, you know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is I would be in favor of deciding tonight that masks are going to be required, barring unforeseen circumstances that would require us to change our decision.
Any other questions?
Sure.
So the town got a lot of heat when they said, potentially someone said that we were going to allow people in the building not wearing a mask, which the selectmen never said, but everybody got heated about it. So what's gonna happen in this situation? If you've got 3 locations, do you have 3 different entrances?
That would be my preference, but I guess that's gonna come down to Mr. Seraphin and Mr. Coughlin on, how the arrangements are gonna work. That would be my assumption. If this is one of the locations, I would assume people would come in the store, but that's.
Because if we
Can I
have,
ask you a question about that? So in terms of the last time I spoke, and maybe I misunderstood it, and that is absolutely possible. But I thought we entertained the idea of having this meeting outside.
It was investigated, correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, the costs from so we're gonna have outside folks come in to handle the technology piece of the meeting. And the cost was well over double to do it outdoors. And it was, I think, upwards of $25,000 to go outdoors. That was.
So I guess I need to ask out of curiosity. If it's a meeting and it's arguably on the soccer field and there's plenty of room for everyone to fit, where does the technology investment come from? I understand seats and I understand the PA system. I don't understand the need for any other technology.
Were you on that, or was it Amber?
Josh might, do you remember what the quote involved, Josh?
There was some sound, there was some visual, for if anything needed to be projected, and there was also the visual part of broadcasting out that was on that quote.
Did we receive more than one quote?
I believe we got 5.
Thank you.
And wasn't there also a pretty large contingency for if it were going to be raining and we needed to move it inside? I think it was that was a
So the contingency on that is they needed it, depending on the company, if I'm speaking correctly, it was roughly 24 to 48 hours. It wasn't what we're known as like graduation outside, where we make that call at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, whether we're going in and out. We had to prep on 24 to 48 hours. And part of that's because these companies, they secure part of their product to put these shows on, for lack of better words, by renting. They don't necessarily own all that equipment.
So I guess first we come to a consensus on the mask thing, and then we can kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the other part.
Andy, I like the way you just phrased it, which is deciding tonight that the policy will be wearing masks. And in the future, we can change that if we see fit.
I'll second that idea.
Yeah.
Because we can always put a sign opposite masks are not needed
Right.
instead of the other way around.
Everybody okay with that?
I would be comfortable with language that says something to that we're going to adhere whatever the mask order is in the state of New Hampshire. But I understand the need to make some sort of proclamation tonight. 100%, I understand that. I think it's going to be tied up in the language of the motion. And especially if we're going to be steadfast in making a motion in the affirmative for masks tonight, to get my vote for the positive, I need to hear what's going to happen to those people who may decide not to wear masks. So I would need those details to vote affirmative or straight up mask.
I think that's fair as far as what the plan is. So are you guys okay? I think we have a general understanding right now. Move on to the second part, see what the situation is going to look like, and see if that helps you decision on the first step. Listen to the plan first, and then go back to the vote on the masks.
Pleasure, board.
That sounds logical to me.
Okay. So I'm not sure if we have more questions for Tom, or if we're just listening to what his plan is.
Well, my plan was all around outside because I told people to move back inside. So I need to process that. And I was hoping very much tonight. I wanted to release this Monday, and I appreciate that. Again, everything that we're all hearing, the media is that there is a 4th surge nationwide, so I can't imagine much change in the next few weeks. So again, I guess shooting from the hip, I would, you know, it's, if we follow similar guidelines to what we did at the town meeting, I would suggest y'all think about if you have 3 locations, not making them open, start with the gymnasium. That's full according to whatever standards. Then go to the second location only if necessary, and then go to the third only if necessary. I believe that was total 175,
Roughly.
roughly 175. So my strong belief is that probably need no location this year, just because there's not much on the ones that's, there's no building, there's no budget or agreement. We might, so I'd ask you to think about that. We could certainly, you know, system operators and then people operators, big issue. I would ask the budget committee as far as the select board to only have as few people up front as possible for the couple that were there. So typically a chair and budget committee rep. Same thing for the budget committee. And then recognize all of the members of various boards or documents. The other thing we did at the meeting was, which would be a little, I think a little bit more about the rooms. But we did have a select board member go around with a microphone, so people were expecting it first and second people would walk through whatever possible problems. So that would require you all to find volunteers. So anybody going through the term will go on. Guidance typically. Just getting back to the masks, the moderator guidance, and kind of it's to default to whatever the public policy is. So if the building policy is masks, then the recommendation from the Secretary of State's office is that it should default to that policy. Smoking, we're not going to smoking to the school district. Because that's the only policy. So that's the only thing I can think of that I would ask you all to think about. We have last several years, I think of how many now. It's people have presented a petition right before the meeting started, requesting any dollar warrants to be voted on ballot. Should that happen, and that's absolutely the prerogative of the meeting. Should that happen, that will certainly.
So we would need a ballot box in each room.
We need a ballot box in each room, we need volunteers in each room. You know, so minimum of, you know, the system moderator, we don't see the ballot box, but we, you know, people getting the ballots, will count in. Again, that's thinking through it just tonight, because I wasn't sure. Even when I just touched base on logistics of that, because town as efficiently and as quickly as possible. You don't have any, there's nothing that people can vote on that means to be voting for an hour, so we just need to leave it open as long as people if it does happen in the rooms, we would certainly make sure that the staff for that. So I would think on and I can take care of system moderators. I'll talk to our school district clerk. She would ask if I had any inkling in terms of requesting, people requesting to dollar amount, dollar warrants, vote for the known conditions that are enough supplies. So it's all set for that. So not necessarily here and now, but there's something to drop in on. message that it's anticipate this happening. So,
Is there anything, Patty or Josh, questions you have, or anything that you'd like to ask tonight?
There's a request, for people to talk louder, but it's harder to hear.
Pass this around.
So Andy, I've got a question. So if we have 3 separate rooms, 3 separate entrances, we're gonna need 3 sets of books, and we're gonna need 3 supervisors of the checklist to check people in, to give them their,
Yeah, if I can just ask, so the rooms are the gymnasium here in the auditorium?
I don't
Yes.
know what.
Yes,
Okay. So I guess I would question the need for 3 separate entrances. If everyone fit the gymnasium, why would we even want to launch it? It's all accessible from here. People can easily social distance. Most people are going to be parked out there anyway. So, and again, from my thinking, I don't know why we wouldn't bring people in through here, fill up the auditorium first. Use this as the secondary backup and use the auditorium as the third versus 3 separate entrances. We need to have X amount of time reports and our handouts are used. I didn't see that kind of further off. Just access for it back if necessary. So.
Well, my only concern is, because a lot of people thought that the selectmen were gonna let people into the meeting without masks on. So people with masks don't want to be anywhere near people who don't have masks. So I'm thinking we're gonna need a lot of manpower just to direct that, so we can get them right there at the entrance. If we have one main entrance, everybody comes in, these people don't want to wear a mask, they go right into this room, probably, or.
And again, I mean, that's what we can do, but at least it's managed in one location. Versus 3 locations. Again, I guess my concern would be if we literally have 3 people in the auditorium because that's where they wanted to be, that's where they felt safest. The amount of extra work, and it wasn't necessary because we only have 100 people in the gymnasium, the amount of extra work that would, logistical issues that would create, I would prefer to not make that an option. If we get up, and I mean, we had just a little over 100 at a time.
We're getting input from the public that they can't hear now.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
So we had, a little over 100 at town meeting. Typically, school is more. But this is fairly unprecedented because it's May.
So you'll
It's really,
probably need all of us here to help direct traffic.
definitely we need everyone in that. So I don't know if Mr. Morris and his senior struggling for last minute sort of summer spring thing. They typically are. We certainly used a number of students in during the elections. They did a great job. So.
The scouts like to volunteer.
Sorry?
The scouts like to volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would be much more comfortable with that. Again, I do get concerned about logistics, technology in 3 different rooms, obviously doable, but if I have to do that, I will not be necessary. So.
There's roughly 175 in the gym. What are the numbers on the other 2 locations?
I believe around 100 here, give or take, and 75 in the auditorium, give or take.
So what I'm struggling with right now, and it kind of sounds like Tom might be looking for clarification, is back to Ann's point. There was discussion around the town meeting of should people without masks be in a completely separate space? Or can they be in the same space but just in a section, right? And obviously for logistical reasons, one location would then just in a corner or whatever is clearly,
So the recommendation for all of this was to sequester them, but as minimally as necessary. So again, from my perspective, if there were a corner of the bleachers in the auditorium that was, you know, X amount of feet from everyone else, that you don't want to make people feel like, you know, they can't fully participate in the process because you're doing something that's really going to put you, you know, this other way.
so where I'm going is, I don't think, and I could be wrong, like you said, numbers were lower at the town meeting. I expect them to be lower than they have been in recent years. Again, no huge budget items, teacher contracts, anything like that. I feel like 2 would be the max, right? I can't see us using all 3 spaces. So I'm wondering if this, and maybe this doesn't make sense, but if we planned to have a quarter of one section of bleachers, one side, back quarter, whatever, but we still prepared with an extra ballot box and appropriate staff, so that if that area became overcrowded or overflowed or whatever, we had the flexibility to utilize the second location if we had to. Do you think that's doable logistical wise to have that in our back pocket?
I think you need to plan for all 3. Because again, worst case scenario is the numbers I heard Josh share was 350. We have had years when we've had more than 350 people show up, and then we're in quandary.
How do you guys, I mean, I'm really torn about this, but how do you guys feel about starting with the idea of using one location? But if the number of unmasked people gets above some certain threshold, we don't really make some that.
I would support that based upon the current state mask ordinance that we have in place, where really you're not required to mask unless you're closer than 6 feet. There's no reason for us to say, shame on you, you're not wearing a mask, you must go to another room. I don't want to be a part of that at all. I don't think it's very neighborly. I think if we do have the appropriate social distancing, I would certainly support being in the same room, even if it's a designated area. But I definitely do support also planning in case we do have an overflow. But I don't see a reason to sequester people just in case they're wearing a mask or not, unless, you know, to a different room automatically. So I definitely support what Tom's saying. If we can all fit in the gym, we should do that. That's what I would like to see us do, but plan for overflow.
And who's counting the people?
And who's also enforcing the mask rule? We are not the mask police. Who's enforcing that ordinance?
The board would.
Yeah.
Just like the selectmen had to.
Yeah.
The board would
I
have
mean, we had a discussion because something was heard at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and here we are now discussing exactly the same thing. When we talked about this, we were like, it's a school policy, you have to have a mask on, plain and simple. And that's where we are right now. So going beyond that and saying, oh yeah, you know, we'll have a separate space for those unmasked. Now, I understand it's a medical need that they can't be masked. That's a different thing. But people choosing not to wear a mask also instills fear in another population that are very serious about this. And that in some light can be looked at as voter suppression. So, you know, and I'm not, if you don't want to wear a mask, that's your choice. If you want to wear a mask, that's your choice. And I'm not getting in the middle of that argument. But right now we have a policy in place that if you come into the building, you wear a mask. Plain and simple. That's our policy. And that right now at this point supersedes the state mask mandate. We've made a choice, just like a private business makes a choice to have a mask mandate. If you're going to come in, you have to have a mask on. Or if you want to come in, you can't have a mask on. There are those businesses too. So, you know, at this point, I think we are where we are with. I don't see anything changing in less than a month. And I think we should just hold our ground right here where we are. The school has its mask policy. If you come in the door, you wear a mask, plain and simple. And we don't even need to have a vote on it tonight. You know, we'll have space available for possibly people who can't wear a mask. And if people come in and refuse to wear a mask, well, they can go there too. Because at that point, it's a choice. It's not, you don't get to come to to town meeting and make a political statement. That's not neither here nor there at this point in time. So where I am right now, we have what we have. Whether you disagree or you agree with it, again, it doesn't matter. We have what we have. So I don't even really think we need to have a vote on this tonight.
I suppose you're right, if we're not changing anything, we don't need to vote. Amy, Dan, something we've heard?
I was just looking up this is Amy, I was just looking up the emergency order. I tend to be someone who wears masks more often, and so I didn't realize that it says, it has that language about 6 feet in it. I thought it was that if you were in a public place, you had to have a mask on, sort of, period. But I guess that is,
No,
I
God.
believe that is the school policy. Does our school policy have anything about, take your masks off, or you can take your masks off if you are more than 6 feet apart?
I don't believe so. You'll probably shake your head.
Yeah,
Can we get a copy
Yeah.
of that policy, or just where is that not normal?
The mask policy, yeah, it's in the normal, it's on the website, yep,
The academicalized,
I can't remember.
I'm sorry, Phil. Hold on, let me-
I also, we've all experienced this pandemic living, and especially when you have to be in a crowd, if you're in a downtown setting or you're in a grocery store, there's often brief moments of like, oh, let me move out of the way for this person, and that puts me within 2 feet of another person. And I see that happening often in a meeting setting like this. So I think I'm in line with what Jean was saying. We have a mask policy. It says wear a mask, and that, those are the rules.
It's up.
Yeah, again, honestly, all due respect, it's, y'all are, please feel free to debate this as long as you want to. Every moderator in the state debated this and brainstormed with this for 4 hours from Sunday to Saturday. And you can just do it all if you want. Again, I made my suggestion relative to 1 room at a time. I also think we need to come up with a contingency. I can't imagine more than 350 people showing up based on what's on the warrant at these unusual times. And if we have more than 350 people showing up, we at least need to have, we can't wait till 9 o'clock Saturday morning. And right now, unless there's some brainstorming that can happen between now and then, based on the governor's emergency order, and there's also part of the emergency order involves that number of people. And so it's not, it's a 6 feet, but it's also, so many people in the space, etc. So feel free to look at the details. Frankly, the worst case scenario, the only tool I would have is to post it on which we're capable of doing. But this is a postponement, and I would certainly want to, the Secretary of State's office before we can see the thoughts. So we either come up with something in terms of Plan C, or we understand that in the event that a whole bunch of people showed up, and can't comply with Declaration of Emergency order, which is postponed. Okay. You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question for Josh. Those numbers, 175, 100, and 75, are they based on 6 feet or 3 feet?
6 feet.
So there's a contingency right there. If we can go below 6 feet.
I don't believe we can go below 6 feet.
But you may have people from the same household who are able to sit
Yeah.
together as well.
Yeah, so those numbers might go up to 400.
Yeah, it might get to 400. So I think
Point taken, there's going to become.
Y'all can look at the details again. I'd encourage you to look at the emergency order in detail and also reference the number of people, because that does change the dynamics of it. So, you know, we have a tentative plan. I just think we need a backup. I think we have to look at that. My sense is that, my belief is they're not necessarily going to show up because of what's on the record. They very well may show up because of just stuff.
Any other questions for Tom? I want to be respectful and let him get out of here if he so chooses.
Thank you very much.
We still have a whole agenda for us too. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So, see everyone there?
Yeah. If you think of, if you have an idea of the numbers for people, as far as ballot counters and all that stuff that we're responsible for, if you want to shoot that my way, so I've got, I'll make sure the people are there. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go back to agenda item real number 3. Unless, yes, anything else anybody wants to say?
Yes, just follow up. I need to know, where is the mask policy? Because I would like the opportunity to take a look at that again. I'm looking at the policies, I don't see it. I'm also not able to search, I don't have enough battery on my computer. I'm having a hard time searching my phone.
Yeah, I can find it for you.
I appreciate
I
that.
saw it earlier today.
Okay.
Any other questions around town meeting?
So, Andy, this is Amy. I just wanted to say for the record that, we're gonna need to find a better way for, for board members to participate remotely with this new setup, because I could only hear maybe like 5% of what Tom was saying.
Okay, I need to be better about the microphones too, including the one up here at table, so.
I'm not, yeah, that might be helpful, but it might also be that we need more microphones.
Okay, well, Tom had one.
Pointing in the wrong direction.
Oh, he
Your
did.
microphone?
Yeah, no, I know. She was saying she couldn't hear
Yeah.
Tom, but Tom
I
had
had
his own.
several calls from people that said they
Okay.
could hear, but the audio is less than desirable.
Yep, and appreciate everybody's patience. This is our first time doing this, so
Yeah.
we will listen to those suggestions.
So do we have our plan of attack? Or are we gonna finalize it at our next meeting? Who's gonna do what? How many people do we need?
Yeah, I think we'll need some time to gather bodies, and Tom said he would let me know the number. So I guess. I think,
Finalize at our next meeting?
yeah, and I think that, you know, just to state it plainly, I think Gina is technically correct in that unless we intend to change anything about the mask policy, we don't need to take action on that tonight. The current policy of the building is that masks are required. And then I think also, just again, to restate the plan, the loose plan, I guess, for the meeting is that there will be a section in the gymnasium, particularly for anybody that may show up without a mask, which we are not encouraging by any means. There will be a space available. If that became too crowded or too populated, we would overflow into another space. We've got 3 total spaces available for a maximum capacity of in the neighborhood of 350 people. If the number were to get to a number above that, or slightly higher, as people said, it could be more than 1 person from a household. But there is a point there where it would not be able to be held within the policies that we set forth, and unless a contingency plan were to be had between now and then, which is probably unlikely, the moderator would be forced to postpone the meeting under the provisions set forth in the governor's emergency order, be rescheduled for another day.
So my last question is, are you coordinating this with the school clerk, Cindy?
I'll at least spread out the information. So Tom said he's going to send me, there's some things he's responsible for, some things we're responsible for. He just indicated he would give me the numbers that he thinks we need to have as far as ballot counters and whatnot. When I get that information, I will probably send it out to all of you as information only. You know, if 5 of us are reaching out to community members, we'll get those numbers way faster. Thank you. I'll just
I just want to say that I found the policy called an emergency mask policy. It's EBCF. That's EBCF. And it does state in there, all visitors on campus shall be required to wear a mask at all times. So that it is explicitly stated in the current policy. Thank you.
And I just think to look at the mask mandate, it does not say anything about 3 feet. It just states basically if you cannot maintain 6 feet, you must, from a family member or household member, you must wear a mask in a public setting, indoor or outdoor. So contingency wise, probably have to ask somebody a question about maybe reducing that space to 3 feet. If we can do it for the kids. No?
It's the regulation specifically says K-12 schools, classrooms.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
So,
And honestly, I think the logistics of that would be hard of, Josh and I staff here moving chairs, functioning together, you'd have people in the auditorium standing up, moving around, to see that. That would be probably an hour or two process to rearrange it anyway. But
Just something I was thinking about as far as social distancing as well is, the past few years we have had requests for ballot votes. Everyone queues up, they're close together. I don't know if there's anything that we can do in planning to make sure that we can maintain that, whether it's lines on the floor to kind of go back and forth like this and ask people to keep that distance, or what we can do, because as we know in the past, everybody lines up, kind of takes up the whole area, and that definitely doesn't look like social distancing as we know it today. So I don't know if that also is something we need our eyes on.
yeah, I was thinking about that while he was talking too, and I don't know. I mean, maybe we could have, the sections of the bleachers numbered or something. If there's a ballot vote, this section gets up and votes, and then they're finished and sat back down. This something.
Thank you.
Something. And I wasn't sure if you had your hand up.
Oh, no, thank you.
Amy, anything else before we move on?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so let me get back to my information. Now we'll move back to real item 3, which is minutes. We've got 2 of them. Yes, minutes of the March 2nd.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Right.
I'll second.
Okay, so discussion around the March 2 meetings. Motion to accept in a second. All right, and on a roll call vote, go Amy,
Yes.
Ian,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Gene,
yes.
and yes. March 16th, 2021. Same question.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, questions, comments, concerns with March 16th minutes? All right, and roll call vote. Gene,
Yes.
April,
I'm abstaining because I wasn't present at that meeting.
Ian,
Abstain.
and Amy,
Yes.
and yes. Okay, so then item number 4, first public comment section, only an hour into the meeting. So again, as I mentioned before, public comments are trying to get in person. So a couple of folks here. So I don't think we use the 15 minutes, but I'll go ahead and open up. If anybody wants to speak, come on up to the mic, let me know your name and town. Speak. Here, please.
Hi folks, Brian Gleason from Pembroke, and I come here with a couple of comments. Firstly, again, asking for proactivity and transparency from the board and administration. If I can receive mass emails whenever a student in school has sniffles, or I forget to do the morning check-in, I think getting an email about the actual change in cadence of the school board meeting would be good. Although the bare minimum is status quo for this group, community continuously feels underserved. No notification about the change in cadence for public comments only being done in person. Secondly, now that in-person meetings have been deemed acceptable and productive, I implore a movement for all transition meetings, IP meetings, special education evaluations, and any other parent-teacher conferences immediately be given an in-person option as well. In-person board meetings, I believe those meetings are extremely important and can be better conducted in person. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you.
I was just wondering if you could take a moment to clarify why on this, you've already said it once, but why on this agenda that it does say you have to be present to comment because of the means of communication. We do not have two-way communication on that.
Are you guys okay with me responding? Yeah, so the system that we're using now, we don't have that capability of being in person. It may be a thing, I would like to see it be a thing at some point. I don't know if that's going to be feasible with 100 or, I don't know who's on there tonight, but we've had upwards of 200 people before. Trying to manage that communication in this setting, I don't know if that will happen or not. I also want to clarify cadence. Cadence didn't change. Our meetings are not every 2 weeks. They are typically the first and third Tuesdays of any given month. We also schedule our meetings out for an entire school year at a time, and that schedule is publicly available. Any other public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and close number 4. Move to number 5, which we have 2 items for.
We have a request for 2 consent items. The first item is for a staff member's child to remain enrolled, and we do have a policy for that. I think Kathy put that in the drive just to remind you of what that policy says. And the student has been a student here for a number of years.
If we have discussion on that, would that be non-public or no?
Not if it's on the basic policy and acceptance of the request.
Discussion, motions, questions?
I'll move that we accept the request.
I'll second based on the current policy.
Any conversation around policy itself for this particular request?
Yeah, I just have a question. I know this came up
Hold
prior.
on 1 second.
Okay. I don't want to-
They have to bring
My question is, do we get the student rate from the district that the child is coming from? I know we've discussed that in the past.
The staff member actually pays for that tuition.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, comments, questions?
I would just like to ask that maybe you could, that particular policy on our agenda to take a look at, there's a set dollar amount on there, I believe. And I'm not sure when the last time that was reviewed, but it may be worth just us taking a look at again. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other discussion, there's a motion and a second to accept.
Thank you, Sam.
I'm gonna get it signed.
Yeah, one more motion. So if there's no more discussion, there's a motion and a second to accept request. So on a roll call vote, Amy,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes,
April,
Yes,
Pete,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you. And then there's another.
Your second request is from Dr. Morse to transfer funds, and I'm going to let him explain that to you.
Okay, thank you. As many of you are aware, seniors have been significantly impacted by COVID-19 and our shift in instructional modalities throughout this their final year of Pembroke Academy. The request that I am asking is a transfer of funds of $8,300. I came to that figure because that would be $50 for each senior for their senior class dues. And I'm asking that we transfer that from our co-curricular travel line. We were fortunate to have co-curriculars this year, but we did not, because of our regional schedule, as well as other factors, we did not need to travel throughout the state as much as we typically do. So, I mean, it is traditional for us to ask for senior dues. However, last year we did pay senior dues, and I'd like to continue to do that this year, given the context around COVID.
Any questions, comments, or motions? It's easier than going to the.
I make a motion to transfer $8,300 from budget lines. And Sandy, you have the numbers?
I don't have numbers, but I have the truck.
Yeah.
I know they were the number. Line, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Second.
all right, conversation.
So I understand this is for senior dues, but do we have more explanation of how these money will be spent?
Yeah, senior dues are, in a traditional year, they cover things like roads and the jacket that the diploma goes in. So these are things that are needed for their participation in graduation.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a second, Sandy?
Yeah, Ann and Jean.
All right, hearing none, then on a roll, oh, go ahead.
So I heard that this was $50 for each senior. Is this for each senior that's anticipated to graduate and that will need the roads, jacket, diploma?
That's correct.
Okay, so anyone who may be in jeopardy of not graduating is not included in this?
Well, they are, if we're expecting them to graduate, then they're included in this.
Okay,
Hopefully they will graduate.
right, exactly.
So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Last call. All right, then on a roll call vote to approve transfer of $8,300 from co-curricular travel line to senior dues. Amy,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
and yes.
Thank you.
Then item number 6, donations, looks like we able to. And we will move on to number 7, 7A has been completed, so 7B is facility use update. Hold on, let me check, it's been 7B, kind of forget. 7B, facilities use.
Mr. Copeland.
So last week we,
Microphone.
I tried without it.
I knew you were gonna, I was ready. You were waiting.
So last week, we loosely opened up the school district facilities to outside groups. We sent them an email, anybody that had inquired within the last year that we said no to. We sent them an email. We believe we got everybody. We might have missed a group or two. With that, we sent them some of the new changes to the facility policy that happened a couple months ago, just to give them a little bit of prep on that. And we also sent them a COVID facilities agreement. Our biggest thing is we do so much during the school day for whether it's masks or disinfectant or whatever the precautions that we're working for. We didn't want the outside groups to come in and not have to follow that. So we sent them a COVID guideline and we're ready to start letting groups in. That's the loose version, the quick version.
So I'm curious, what has changed that we're now ready to allow outside entities to use our facilities in the global pandemic? Thank you.
It's starting this summer, right?
So it's starting, we're ready to start, whenever. We could say summer, we could say a week from now. The bottom line is we're starting to prep for that preparation of groups using our building, whether it be specifically like we're saying no to, say, soccer groups or football groups that could be using the fields and going through the precautions pretty easily that, 6 months ago, we just said no. It was no across the board. We believe in being fair in what we're going to do for one. We believe we need to do for the other. Where we've managed a fall season, we've managed a winter season, we have more under our belt, and we believe that with our guidance in precautions in guidance with them, we can get, say, some could use soccer using our soccer fields when that time is right, or whatever group it may be. We just believe we've gone through the guidance to be able to police what's happening within our facilities more than we could 6 months ago.
Any other questions, comments? For us to make?
My question is, does this include, the summer rent program that the town was, allowing the summer rent program to go on? In the past, they've used the village school, there's inclement weather. Have they been in contact with you?
Yeah, so the summer rec program was included on that list. So the email blast that we sent out from my office, they were included on it. They actually were the first ones to inquire. We received notification from them today. With the way the day went, we didn't get to looking into that request, but they have requested.
Oh,
So,
perfect, okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So I appreciate the update. I guess I'll mention, I've been contacted, I don't know if everybody's received the emails or if they've come to me, by at least 3 different groups about this. I think some of them, one of them was Rose, I think, just when are things going to be open and available again. Some of the others have been more pointed at some of the policies. I can encourage those folks to wait and see what was said tonight and see where we land. And then if they still have concerns, ask them to come and, voice them. I can put them on an agenda. So, this may be something that we talk about again next time, or the time after. But definitely glad to hear that. I think it's just one more step getting somewhat back to normal. I think it makes sense that it's in the spring where, most of these activities hopefully are going to be outdoors. So we're getting there slowly. Sounds like we're getting there. Anything else on that? Any questions, concerns, comments? Anything else, John? What?
Just a clarification question is, when we say the facilities are open for use, we're not limiting that to just outside facilities use, but we're opening that up for inside facilities use effective immediately?
Yeah, so we have some inside use happening, whether it's Key Club had a Thanksgiving dinner a couple of weeks ago where they prepackaged meals and delivered them to some of the seniors out in our front circle. To athletics is going on. And I can't speak for all the schools and what groups are happening, but some of the inner groups have started to happen. Specifically like winter carnival stuff that started taking place. You'll see kids here working on whatever they might be up to on that winter carnival stuff, which would be the inside use.
Okay, and so right now our policy still allows for consideration on a case-by-case basis, I believe. So, the things that have been brought up have been student-centered or student-directed activities. So I'm just curious about the community, as a whole, coming in maybe before the summer. But I just want clarification that's open, that the community can request access and these applications are considered on a case-by-case basis. So
I'm perfectly fine with setting a hard date. If I'm told we're not letting any outside group use the facilities until the start of summer day number 1, then I'm okay with that. That's fine. And we'll abide by that. And it probably gives, like we talked about with the mask policy in the prior conversation, it gives us something to work on. It gives us a date or a hard line.
I mean, this is more of a comment directed to the board. Number 1, I think facilities use should be for our students. And so I'm a little uncomfortable opening up indoor facility use beyond our students or student use until the school year ends. I would support it when there's not students in the building, but I would actually like to make a motion that there will be no outside entity or on a case-by-case basis, I guess. But basically, I'd like to see the indoor use, facility use, limited to our students. And on a case-by-case basis, things can be approved maybe for public use. But I'd like to see more restriction on the inside facility use.
Just to add to that, April, if we're going to go that way, I would think we're pretty, we go the same way in the sense of no only school use, whether it's a group or meetings, etc. No activity use outside of the school use, so an outside group. And then just open up that we have, you know, for legality reasons, we have opened up our auditorium many a times to the selectmen or to the town planning, which throughout this whole ordeal, in this whole COVID, we didn't feel like we were the ones to stop that. And if they needed a place to hold their meeting legality-wise to get the audience in, we really felt we needed to offer that and continue to do so. And I would think that would be the line if we're gonna draw a line.
Thank you for that. And my concern is not to necessarily limit the town of Pembroke using our facilities as a public facility, but I am concerned about at this point, where things are just starting to open up to the public in general having access. Thank you. I don't think I made a very clear motion here. So I would like to make a motion that we limit the use of school facilities to the Pembroke School District and the town of Pembroke through the end of the school year, the current school year.
This is Amy, I'll second.
Sorry, I'm just writing. All right, so there's a motion and a second to limit use of school facilities to the school community and, the school and town until the school year has ended. So.
Right.
Discussion.
Town of Pembroke.
Town.
Now that that also includes when we say the school district. When I mention the school district, I'm talking about extracurricular activities that students may be doing. I'm not looking to limit student participation in this building. I want to make sure that the building is safe for our students.
And let's stop. Can we just clarify, April, did you mean the indoor facility? So if somebody wanted to practice in the soccer field, we could allow that now?
That was
just inside?
That was my intent, but I did hear Mr. Coughlin say it's a little easier to just be across the board. I'm actually okay with both, but I'm mostly concerned about indoor.
I can go either way, and just believe what we do for one, we do for the other. And in my line of work, the schools come first, the locals come second, and then everybody else comes third. So that hard line is tough for me, saying no to basketball, a basketball group as an example, and saying yes to a soccer group. Personal preference or personal opinion.
Okay, so I think the motion as it stands right now is that to limit the use of school facilities. Is that, you want to go forward with that, April?
Yes.
Okay, so the current motion that has a second is to limit the use of school facilities to the school and students first and the town of Pembroke as a government entity second. Discussion.
I don't think the motion specified the order of rank.
Agreed. So, you want me to have a seat?
No.
Any other discussion? I guess for my piece, I'd be more comfortable if it did say indoor only, only because, like I said, I have gotten a number of calls about football and summer rec and cheerleading and different things like that. And I think some of our town programs, not necessarily just the select board or the planning board using the auditorium, but programs that are populated by taxpayers in the town and taxpayers' families in town. And I think, and again, this is just personal opinion everybody has theirs. I think we're okay to allow use of outdoor spaces.
So we have to win that.
But we don't have to, it's April's motion.
I mean, I'm just moving forward and seeing where this lands, and if it doesn't land well, making another motion to be quite frank.
Any other discussion? Amy, you still with us?
I'm still with you. I agree with April. We should just see if this is going to pass, and if not, I'm sure we can find something that will.
Right. All right, then I'll roll the vote. Ian?
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and I'm a no. Motion passes. So that is, Josh, do you need anything else on the facilities and stuff? Do you have anything else for us, or questions for us, or action needed, or anything like that?
I think I'm good, but I can sit down if you guys have more.
Any other questions, Josh? I think you're good.
Thank you.
You got it, thank you. Okay, so, on to the next large one, 7C, school instructional model. Turn it over to Patty.
Okay, let's start with the matrix. You have the matrix placed in your drive. That's the color coded chart that we go over at each of your meetings. We've updated the data as of today on the website. Merrimack County has 304.7 per 100,000 cases. Something that Deerfield requested that I did for you as well. They asked me to leave the last set of data so that you can compare the cases from your last meeting to today. So that's why there's two sets of numbers on the second page. So Merrimack County 3 weeks ago was 139.6 per 100,000, and now they are at 301.7 per 100,000. So I did that for each of the counties. The town of Pembroke active cases is currently 12. And for positive COVID results in our schools, Pembroke Academy 4, Three Rivers 1, and Hill 1. That was the latest update that I had from the nurses on those numbers. So in terms of using this, I'm not sure that we need to keep bringing this forward because I'm sure everyone's aware by now that we have an executive order from the governor to bring everyone back as of April 19th. So there's not, the decision-making matrix isn't really relevant any longer. I'm really pleased that I think we're in a really good spot in terms of our plans for return. We did let everyone know that we officially voted on May 3rd after break that we were doing our best to make that happen sooner. And I think every one of our schools has communicated very well to their families, and they were able to accomplish a whole lot in a faster time frame than I expected. So I'm really happy about that. And when the governor made his order for April 19th, I think we all felt really good about our accomplishments and the fact that we had already ordered furniture. I'm going to let each of the principals go through and update you on where they're at. I think we have a couple of glitches to work through relative to this order. One of them is we don't have our desks in yet for grades 3 and 4, but Josh is every single day talking to these 4 people, asking them for a better ETA, and we think next week, right? So we think and cross our fingers that that's going to work itself out. If they come through on their promise, we will have the desks in time. And then the other issue that we have is with Pembroke Academy. We had negotiated an MOA that granted them a flex day for the remainder of the school year on Mondays. So that is in conflict with the governor's order for students to come back 5 days a week. So if we can take it one step at a time and let the principals go through and update you on where each school is at, maybe we can start there. Is that okay?
So last week we brought back our K2 students. There's always this like anticipation when you get the kids in, but when they're finally there, it was a great feeling. One of my favorite things was at the end of the first day, a teacher came up to me and said, my favorite part of the day was being able to say to my kids, I'm going to see you tomorrow. So that's kind of, once you get into that and they're back in, it's just, like riding a bike. They just are getting into it, and it's been really positive. Like Patty said, right now, we're on target to the 19th for 3-4. We don't have desks. Josh agreed updating us. If that's the path, we'll figure something out. I think at this point we have plans like X, Y, Z, AA, all of that. There's lots of different things that we can do to hope, so 19th is what we do anticipate. It's where we had landed previously. So when the governor's order came out, we did feel confident that that was something we were going to be able to meet. So for 3-4, we're excited, and we'll finally have everybody back in, and I'll get to see Hill as Hill. For me, coming in this first year, I don't know what Hill looks like with everybody in, so I think I'm really excited to be able to see it like everybody in and all that. So that's my one little selfish excitement on that to get everybody into feedback. Some of the challenges that we thought we were gonna have, we didn't as of right now, our arrival and dismissal. We put in a couple of little tweaks and our times have not changed. So we are doubling right now the amount of kids coming into the building via car and leaving, and we're still on time within the same amount of time. We don't anticipate it increasing too much, so we're very hopeful with that, you know, our lines will be moving smoothly, arriving and dismissing. And then we have, there's a couple of pictures out there about our wonderful tents for eating outside. So we go and say it's like eating under the big top. The kids are out there every day. We have 15 tables under each tent, so we can have about 30 kids under each tent right now. It works really well. They're wipes down in between everybody. So just one more experience to add for the kiddos. But the goal with that was they needed to be eating 6 feet apart. That was something we were really trying to follow that because they're unmasked at that point, and we wanted to make sure that they were in that safe environment, 6 feet apart. So we really are outside. That's our default. We have another contingency plan if weather doesn't allow, but we are default outside every day eating. So other than that, we're really excited. I think, you know, another week and a half, we'll have everybody in. I know transportation is going to come up in a conversation. Right now, we're okay because it's just K2 in. When we get 3, 4, and CRS back in, there's a few things that we'll have to work through on that. But for the most part, that's kind of where we're at with everything. So we do anticipate everybody back in April 19th. Very exciting.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you in person. It's been a long time. Three Rivers, we have been somewhat busy. We originally had said, we thought that the week after we got back from break was the time we were going to hit, and we're going to move it up by approximately 2 weeks. So we will be having our first students in on the 13th. Well, I shouldn't say the first students. Everybody's coming back all at once the 13th. I did request that we have that Monday, the 12th, as a Google Meet day for kids who are not alive. We have some significant things we need to do in a short period of time. One of our biggest challenges is that we're getting more kids coming back from remote than anticipated. So right now we have 36 coming back, and that is changing daily. I get at least one call a day at this point. I believe our 6th grade will only have 1 student remote, possibly no students remote. So what that has done is the way it affects class size for students that are in person. So we're going to have to start changing individual schedules in order to accommodate that. Our unified arts classes, because of remote, may have 24 at one and 7 at another. So we're going to have to balance all those things. It's going to take time, and we can't do it today because the kids will see a change that's not accurate at home. So we're going to have to do that probably Friday night over the weekend, have it ready for staff to be able to change their rate books. There's a process that takes place through all, and kids will be able to see it by hopefully Monday morning so that they can start seeing any of the changes in the schedule. Changing schedule does not mean they miss anything. It's just they might move from one art class to a different art class. It's the same thing being offered. So we have to shuffle that around. So that's going to be labor intensive for this week. Another relatively large change will be our drop off and pickup. I've been looking at this for quite a few years, to be honest with you, and I think this now forced our hand. We're really concerned about the traffic issue. Only having 4 buses, we're still trying to figure the buses out. Anytime you go from 8 to 4, and then you have everybody back, you got a problem. So we're hoping a lot of folks will drive. The same as with remote, people, lives change, their decisions change, so we're getting kind of, well, I can't do it, but now I can do it. So we're still concerned about that number. But the change that we're going to do, which I think is helpful, with Josh's help, and he reached out to a few people, the police department came down, we looked at our grounds. We will have buses now come
as you're coming up our driveway, they'll go right, but they'll keep going right. They're gonna go around all the way around our back and drop off on our playground. Parents, instead of, there's a little drop-off hook that is really a problem with congestion. They are now going to, when they come up the driveway, they'll turn right, they won't go straight, they'll turn right, and come out to the front of our building and drop off in front of the building where the buses used to drop off. What that will do, hopefully, is parents will be able to go to the stop sign, drop their student off, turn left and go out. Buses, because they only come once, they'll come in, drop off, and get out, and they're gone. Hopefully, we won't have the congestion we had. Staff will still come up the driveway, remain straight, turn left into the staff parking lot. With parents not doing that little hook, we feel like it's going to diminish all that congestion significantly, so that we can get kids in and out, families in and out there a little bit quicker. We're also asking families not to idle. I never want to say goodbye to the child, but we have to get them out as quick as we can, so that we don't get back up all the way to the high school, which we have done before. So that is going to be an interesting change. We are doing a trial run with that while we're still in hybrid. So Thursday, this group, which is, they'll come and the buses will go out back. And Friday, a different group, they'll go out back. So all students will have done it at least once. The biggest concern we've had is we've had to redistribute where students are, because we do use the out back. So we're putting 2 classes behind the library, and the 2 classes in front of the building. And each class will have their own door to come in to access the building in the morning. So I'll let you know how that goes. Lunches, I don't like what you're doing in middle school. We will have one lunch. We're breaking each grade into hopefully only 2 lunches. So we'll have one half in the cafeteria, the other half will be mobile. And I say mobile because hopefully it'll be outside. Not unlike the middle school, we have 30 tables that Josh has ordered, we have 20 chairs, we're trying to set them outside now. Obviously, in climate weather, we're gonna have to make another place, and that's where the problems begin. I run out of staff really quickly. We have to divide it. If we divide it in half, I'm close. If we have to divide it in 3, I'm in trouble. So we're working with the phys ed department. If they can be outside, we'll be in the gym. If they can't be outside, we're trying to work in an activity room. We can get 20 kids in there. We'll have to go to another classroom. We'll have to get support. So those are the kind of things that it's taking some time to iron out to make sure that we keep kids 6 feet apart. Like I said, the fully remote kids, the number is going down. So what that is basically, I don't want to use the word force, but I guess it's forcing us to do is we're going to have to live stream those kids. And that's going to look different than what remote is now. So they will have one class like everybody else, but that teacher will be on camera teaching kids in person. And I think it's important to know that that's going to be a long day, where they're going to start at 8 o'clock and they're going to be done at 2:35. And the interaction between them and the teacher will diminish. You can't have 10 kids in person and 5 kids not have the same interaction. And that's unfortunate. Remote is not something that we're truly and honestly set up to do. And it's not sustainable. But we're going to make it through this year with that. And now we do hear more and more kids, and we hear how many kids are coming back, and we can say, I want to go back too. So we'll see how that unfolds. But schedule-wise, it's been quite a challenge. Having said that, we're excited to have everybody back. Those of you that have students at the school know that what we're trying to do this week is have class check-ins when they're independent day, trying to get them used to a 5-day schedule. We've done them on Mondays. So if they're at home, they have to come in and check in for 5, 10, 15, sometimes the whole class while they're at home to get them adjusted to 5 days a week. So we put in the schedule for independent days for the last 2 weeks. So we're excited. It's going to happen, but there may be some bumps in the road, but we're going to work through them all.
Okay. For Pembroke Academy, we have all of our seniors back, and we are bringing back juniors 4 days a week, beginning today. And then we will have sophomores and freshmen coming back 4 days a week next week. So all of our students, with the exception of our 4 remote students, will be back on the 15th, and we'll be ready for the 19th. We're in a much better spot than I think a lot of other area high schools. One challenge that we have that Superintendent Sherman talked about earlier is our flex day. And that was product of collective bargaining, and it's interesting to see how that plays out. I will say that we have 1 in 8 students at Pembroke Academy are accessing their classes fully remote right now. And when I spoke to a representative from the state over the summer, they said VLAX cannot be your remote option. So we had to develop a remote option, and our teachers have done that with considerable work. And it will be challenging for us to go 5 days a week, as well as continuing to do that full remote option for those students. So similar to what John is saying, if we were to do that, that will look different for students, and it will be more of the live stream scenario and less of the one-on-one that they're getting during those flex days. So that is a consideration for sure. But I will tell you, I greet the students as they walk in every day, and it's nice to see more and more students on a more frequent basis. Just today, I saw a student who had a school bag, a bag full of baseball gear, and a trombone. And I said, that's what it's all about. So it is certainly good to get the students back in here, but I will tell you that we still have some things that we have to navigate in terms of our remote students.
Questions for anybody?
For the middle school, the question I have is the modulars, because of the size, are we not able to use them for the rest of the school year so far?
Well, the one half of the modular is TLC, so that is completely separate from us. That's an SAU program. The other half is where we have all of our speech and language and servicing all of our students there. We don't have any additional space. Like every ounce of everything, including closets, are being used for that. So it's not an additional space we could use. We've talked about using art rooms and stuff. It comes down to staffing. I have a space, I can clear it out. I don't have a person to go in there and cover.
Right, thank you. And then I just had a question for Mr. Morris, when you were saying about the executive order that all students have to be in 5 days a week on the 19th. So how does that work with us still being able to use or may not use that flex day?
That's an excellent question, and I think it's a question that's not isolated to Pembroke. There are a lot of towns and high schools that have flex days that also have to try to figure this out. It's, just the essential question, I think, is does the governor's executive order override the collective bargaining agreements that have been hammered out throughout the state? I don't have an answer to that. I can tell you that going 5 days a week, as well as having 1 out of every 8 of our students accessing fully remote, is something that we have never done in public education, and that will come at a considerable cost for our staff and for the students, both accessing remotely as well as the students who are in the classroom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for TRS, I like the bus route. That's really cool.
I'll let you know.
Yes. I guess, Andy, the last question I have is the 16th meeting, I wasn't able to be here, but there was talking about a lot of grants and funding. So how are we purchasing all this new equipment and the rent of the tents?
Sure, so we have been blessed to receive a lot of grant funds, and we are being very cautious to make sure we're spending every penny. So we had one of our grants close out on December 31st, which meant we could pull some money out of another grant to make sure that that was spent. They were calling that the supplemental grant that you probably heard about. So we made sure that that was spent on December 31st. We're in process. We have every penny budgeted in the first round of ESSER funds. We were just awarded another, I think like $797,000 for the next round of ESSER funds. We already have a spreadsheet, we've got some things going, and that, I think the tents were in that one, right?
Yes, they were.
So that's, the tents and the tables are in the newest round of ESSER funds that we received. So we've been really lucky to get everything that we need to make this happen. Some of the concern around the state is, it's mentioned a lot, like, well, we gave you plenty of money, but we need staff, we need space, and those are the things we can't buy, which makes it difficult, but it's been great that everything that we physically need to purchase, we've been able to do that.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
So I heard about, Lunch at Hill, TRS, PA, are there any issues with lunch or possibly having to go outdoors to eat lunch?
Thank you. Yeah, so there were two systems that we needed to really put in place prior to bringing our students back with an accelerated incremental increase. The first one was parking, which, something we do every year, we just don't do it in the middle of the year. And we needed a week notice for that, and then a week to allow students to buy parking passes. The second system was our lunches. And we have created a fourth lunch period. That does come with a little bit of an interruption for our world language classes, but it's something that we can figure out. And so by doing that, that brings down our student population in the other three lunches. And in addition to that, we now have, during the day, 8 tables that are set up in our gym lobby with seats on either side of those. And then we're also going to have tables out in our main office courtyard in this area when the weather gets nicer and the environment gets a little drier. But as of right now, we haven't needed those tables out there yet. I think we will when our sophomores and freshmen come in. But we're ready. We're ready for that. It'll be fun.
One other question, I was curious if you could hear more about the contingency plan or inclement weather or gap signals in March.
What we're able to figure out is in inclement weather, the major concern is staffing. So if we split, that's right now we have double what we usually have for duties covered. If we split again, that's an additional. So it's something we could do in a pinch if we needed to. It's not sustainable long run. But essentially what we would do is take the lowest enrolled class that has the lowest number of students. They would go to the cafeteria, which would provide one duty person there. And then we would pull off of each individual remaining class the number of students until we get to 6 feet. So there's about 9 students that could be in those rooms. I might have to pull 6 or 7 from each of those rooms to put them into the gym and then find her into our cafeteria and have an additional duty person in there. To watch them. We're making sure we're not crossing cohorts, that they're 6 feet apart, and we have the number of staff available there. So that's our contingency in weather.
Thank you.
Nothing from me, thanks.
I think I'm good too. I think the next topic is buses.
Yes. So, like I just said earlier, you can throw all the money that you want at things, but if you only get 4 buses, you only have 4 buses. There's no more buses, there's no more drivers. So this has by far been our biggest obstacle. Right now, I did put the numbers in the drive for you, the email that we got from Linda, if you had a chance to look at that. So it's, the difficulty has been, we've surveyed our 4 families to death, but we keep surveying them. And unfortunately, family circumstances change. We already had parents say, hey, I said I would transport my child, but I got a new job. I can't do it anymore. All kinds of different reasons that we've had some changes made already, which makes it very difficult to nail down who's going to be on the bus and who's not going to be on the bus. So to the best of our ability, we put together the numbers Linda has come up with. They are extremely high, as you can see. We've talked about lots of different ways to pull this off. We hate to do staggered starts. We hate to have kids coming and going. If we have to have a population stay after school, We're thinking it probably makes sense to do Three Rivers, that it would be easier to supervise those students after school. But then we're talking about, well, families may have siblings that are relying on the middle schooler to be home when they're home to watch them after school. So there is no magic bullet, there's no great solution that we've worked through, just lots of things that we're talking through. So I guess the decision for the board that will really help us to move forward and figure out how we're going to do this is how many riders you're comfortable with on the buses. When we met with the commissioner, so to be clear, nobody had a heads up that the governor was making that announcement. We were not informed that there was even a press release going on. I got an email from someone, hey, the governor's on, did you hear what he just said? We knew nothing, so it took us by surprise, to say the least. So the commissioner did call a meeting on Monday with all of us, and we jumped onto that, and he started going through a Q&A, and he said that he got together with the executive board of the superintendents on Friday afternoon, started taking some questions, and said, I'm going to take these back and get answers for you. So on Monday, his mission was to kind of go through those questions that were asked and try to give answers. Partway through the conversation with us, he received the document from the governor's office. So he was able to share on his screen the document that answered all the questions. Everyone's doing their best, but it is frustrating, some of the answers we received that felt like non-answers. So I think that's what Dan said, everyone around the state is struggling with this, this news. It's very new, and we don't know some of the answers. But one of the things that people asked was about transportation, because we are not the only ones dealing with this problem. So someone asked, in 3 different ways, people asked about transportation. The same answer was given, which was New Hampshire K-12 back to school guidance recommends maximizing space between riders, facing forwards, and not getting up from their seat or exchange seats. If possible, consider assigned seating on buses. So that was the answer to every single transportation question. So they didn't say that you can't have more students on the bus. They didn't say that you have to have them 3 feet apart. And that's what people were looking for. People were saying, we've been following this guidance all along, and now it's sort of doesn't matter, I guess, is the nicest way I can think to put it. So there's no limitation on the number of students on the buses, and I guess that's going to fall to each individual district to make that determination. 52 students would need 2 per seat. Beyond that, you're starting to put 3 students per seat. And you can see from the numbers that Linda came up with, for pink bus, it goes morning, afternoon, it's 52.64. Yellow is 58.66. Green is 55.70. White is 58.60. Blue, she didn't think it was going to go any higher. So those are really large numbers, clearly way more than 2%. So I can't say that we have a great answer for you. I can just share with you the guidance that we received and the numbers that we have that we're dealing with.
Andy, this is Amy. Can Patty just repeat real slow this time that key language from that guidance, please?
Sure. New Hampshire K-12 back to school guidance recommends maximizing space between riders, facing forwards and not getting up from their seat or exchange seats. If possible, consider assigned seating on buses.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Has there been any mention of RSA 189:6 transportation of students, which says we must transport all students? I believe it's with the grades 1 to 8 who live more than 2 miles from the school. Any discussion of that being waived, because we do have an obligation to do that.
Correct. No, it was not discussed.
Thank you.
When I was looking at the numbers, we have an executive order that we need to get the kids to school and in school. I'm thinking that we are going to have to go with these numbers. And my personal opinion is these buses are by neighborhoods. And these children have always been playing with each other through the whole entire time, which I'm sure Amy can say, in our neighborhood, they're all together. as it is now, they're not in the same families, so I think this is something that we're gonna have to do.
Yeah, I think the question is, for the board to decide, put as many students on the bus as you need to and get them here in one run, or do you want us to look at a double run and then taking students after school? I think those are the only two options I can think of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty opposed to, staggering the starts. I think it was kind of, listening to the principal earlier in the year was pretty messy. Definitely not ideal. This is just a thought, but, using the alert now system, putting in a request that if anybody can, if your children are intermingling with other children in the neighborhood, can you figure out a carpool thing, whatever the case may be, just putting that out there. But aside from that, I think we have to go with this. I think there's no other way around it. And again, the staggered starts, I really don't think it should be an option.
Amy, questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm concerned about this. I feel I might be interpreting that language a little bit different than Patty was interpreting it, because I feel like maximized space is one child per seat. That maximizes space. But I don't feel like dead set in having one student per seat. If that would cause no complications, that would be my preference. And I'm looking at these numbers and I'm just trying to do the math here. So for example, Pink Bus, which, in full disclosure is my children's bus, 64 in the afternoon. So am I right that it's not even possible to have 2 students per seat at 64? I thought is it 26 students is 1 per seat, so then 52 would be 2 per seat.
Correct.
So 64 is some seats have 3 students.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes, town of Drury, Basin, that's correct.
Okay. Yep. Sorry, I couldn't hear. Thank you, Andy, for relaying. I always thought, and sorry for springing this out there, that it was absolutely ridiculous to expect 3 children on a seat without any pandemic circumstances. And then when you add in the fact that there is a pandemic, I just am not comfortable with 3 students per seat. And I don't know if these numbers could be, it's close to being 2 per seat. And so I don't know if we could massage this somehow to get it down to 2 students per seat, or if the sibling matching would get us there, so like all of the seats with 3 students would be siblings or something like that. I would be comfortable with 2 students per seat unless they were siblings, and then it would be 3, but I don't think I'm comfortable with anything more than that.
Do you mind if I just, so Amy, there was another question that was pretty specific, and it said, if we need 3 feet distancing on buses, we will not be able to open. We do not have the capacity to do this, and we don't have enough parents who can or will transport. So that was one of the questions, and the same exact answer was given. So that's where I got the indication that it's, maximize the space as much as you can, but you need to get the students to school, was the message that I told them.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful context.
Basically, just figure it out and do it.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one for me. I've definitely been, more on the side of caution throughout this whole entire thing. But at this point, I guess I kind of feel like it's out of our hands. The governor says the kids are going back to school, so they're going back to school. So I think, like Patty said, our decision comes down to more kids on a bus or double runs. And in my mind, neither of those is a good option. I think in my head, double runs is, or rather, more kids on the bus is the lesser of the 2 evils. And my hope is that what Ann said is correct, that the cohorts that are already playing together on the streets are enough to kind of make that a little more okay. I mean, I'm not okay with it. I don't like it. But if the choice is do this or force double runs again, like Gene said, that was a mess. We were voting on new routes every meeting. That makes it hard for the families to plan, more constant change, which I think has been the biggest problem, this whole school year for families, is never settling into a routine. So if it comes down to if we're gonna vote, would you like a vote for affirmative?
Yeah, I think the last vote was you didn't put a number on it, but you said if it gets something crazy like 45, let us know, and we're definitely at crazy.
Yeah, so we're crazy, but I mean, I certainly don't want this to come across as I'm okay with this. I'm far from it. But I do think that double runs would be worse, and so I would support approving these numbers. Go ahead, Ms. Murphy. When I say these numbers, I don't know that we should put a number on it. If we're saying that people can ride the bus and the buses can be close to capacity, we just have to say it that way and not put a particular number on it. And I guess it's worth saying out loud, the other thought that I've had is families that are electing to send their kids back in person are at least tacitly indicating that they are okay at some level with the COVID risks that may still exist at school. And that doesn't mean that no family is going to have a problem with these busing numbers. I get that, but if you're sending your child back, you're at least somewhat okay with this. And I still don't like the idea of them being 3 seated on a bus, but I guess I can get there if I have to.
Yeah, I just wanted to make 2 comments. One is, these are not hard numbers. So we have a tendency, we look at busing, we do this every year, this is nothing new. If you're going to the bus route and the kid is out there to pick them up, if the kid is there to not pick them up. And that changes, it ebbs and flows all the time. So these numbers could be higher, they could be significantly lower. I also know when the weather starts getting better, older kids, we can walk home, they didn't want to ride a bus, we have athletics coming in the afternoon. It's not a huge amount of kids, but everyone counts. Plus, the health needs to go down again because they're at the school doing activities. So those are not hard numbers. The other piece that everyone needs to be aware of, because I don't like double runs, I'll tell you that right now. That contact tracing, if we have on a bus, still 6 feet, and you can start doing the math really quickly. How many kids may have to be quarantined if that happens? I think it needs to be said. It'll be quite a challenge. We'll have to have some seats, obviously. We'll have to look at the cameras, but it's going to affect both schools also. So we need to know that. I think everyone needs to hear that that's a possibility. Now, we hope we don't have to, because I'm telling you. But I just think it's important to know, one is they're not hard numbers, and 2, contact tracing will be quite a challenge.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the bus schedules up to the full capacity of the school bus. The reason I'm making this is because we do have a statutory and constitutional requirement to provide transportation for students. The guidance of the state is simply that, guidance. We have an obligation to provide for the students, and I do agree, compared to the lesser of the 2 of the evils of putting everyone on the bus, or staggered schedule, that the one bus run will be better. Thank you.
I'll second that.
So we will be a motion Gene seconded to approve running buses at capacity. Discussion up to full capacity. Our discussion comments.
This has nothing, doesn't pertain to this year at all, but I think with the number of buses we have next year, given the information that Gail has provided us as to the training and availability of drivers, is something that we're gonna have to look at closely starting for next school year. Because, at this point, you can look at it, we're gonna have 4 buses next year too. In 6 months, train a bus driver. But anyway, that was just a comment.
And something I neglected to mention too, we have been in constant contact with Dale about their driver's comfort level, because earlier on we had heard that drivers were not going to drive. They had too many students on the bus. Just for your information, I did add the bus drivers to our clinic, the mass clinic that we took part in that I arranged, so they are vaccinated and comfortable knowing that more students will probably be on buses, just for information.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion or comments before we call? Okay, so there's a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the running the school buses up to full capacity. Roll call vote. Amy?
No.
Dan?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
No, yes. Motion carries. Bus ridership was second, and full return update was third. I think we did, are we done with 7C? So we'll move on to 7D, school board goals.
Wait, no, we're not. We're not.
What did we miss?
Full return update. I'd like more information about, we could receive an email from the New Hampshire School Board Association that advised school board members that if they're not able to return to a full 5-day schedule per the governor's order, that we are to seek a waiver. So I'd like some conversation about that and make sure that waiver either when it will be requested or maybe it's already been requested. So I'd like more information about that. Thank you. That was a topic of conversation at the commissioners meeting. People were asking what waivers would be granted for, and it was made quite clear that waivers were not going to be granted unless it was a danger to students to operate the schools in a certain fashion. So it sounded like waivers were not going to be granted unless it was pretty dire circumstances. And it went so far as to say that we no longer have the ability to put our schools into remote for longer than 48 hours without permission from the commissioner, DHHS, and the governor's office. So it's pretty restricted. I've been talking to our council to get some advice because, like I said, and like Dan said, there are other schools dealing with the exact same thing who have flex days built in, and now we're saying, what do we do? So I'll continue to work on that, and it wouldn't hurt to put in a waiver, certainly. So I would also do that. Can you give us a date when you'll do it? Because that is the advice that we received. So we want to make sure, even though you've been told that, we want to make sure we follow the protocol of doing what we're being advised. Sure. I think I should be able to get it in the next couple of days. There's one form, so I think I'll just send an email and then they ask me to fill something out as well. Fantastic. Thank you.
Anything else on 7C?
Maybe can we just maybe make a note for our next meeting to put the waiver on the agenda so we can have a conversation about the status, find out what's happened. That's been submitted. Thank you.
So 70 is school board goals, and again, asked to put superintendent goals on there as well. Amy was the one that asked me to put school board goals on there, so go ahead.
All right, awesome. Well, I have some prepared remarks that I'm going to go over as quickly as possible. Sandy, I have an email ready to go that I will send you with my prepared remarks right after I'm done. I listened to the Meet the Candidates event, a few weeks ago before the school board election, and was sort of re-inspired to tackle a few things now that we've, mostly got this little pandemic thing behind us, hopefully, fingers crossed. So I put together my thoughts, and here we go. I would like us to put together whatever we're going to call it, a work plan, a strategic plan, goals. I don't really care what the title is. I think we should categorize 3 things: ongoing things, stuff we do all the time. Negotiate union contracts, develop the budget, warrant articles, maintain policies, grant leave requests, that's just ongoing, bread and butter business of the school board. And then some year-specific tasks, and I've got a list of those that I'm going to go over. And then anything new. So this would just be a placeholder acknowledging that, just like with the pandemic, something is probably going to happen every single school year that was unforeseen that requires us to address it. So just a placeholder to acknowledge that. So for me, for year-specific goals, I'll go over my list, but what I'm hoping we can do is that all of us take the opportunity to, generate a similar wish list of things that you hope that we can accomplish as a board. And that we all jointly prioritize, like, all right, this is our top one, our next top one, et cetera. So I don't mean to indicate that my proposed list is like the list of things we must do. I just took the time to brainstorm this, and so I wanted to share it. First of all, number one, have board packets ready entirely in completion by the Friday before board meetings. I think this is something that is critically important for proper preparation and also potentially making for quicker meetings. Distributing the entire board packet to the public, except of course what is exempt from being public under RSA 91A. Number three, expanding and further routinizing outgoing communications from the public school district so that it includes Facebook, the Pembroke School District website, the website of each of the 3 Pembroke schools, shared Google Drives of all the committees, and one call. And maybe there's more. And of course, we would need to lock down a Pembroke School District Facebook site so that it was, just us outgoing communication, not a place for dialogue or receiving comments. That would be during our meetings. And that way, anytime that information needs to go out, it's just pushed to this whole slate of communication outlets, making it more transparent, more accessible. Significantly revamp the Pembroke School District website. Even after a year of serving on the school board, and I think I have a pretty decent head on my shoulders, I really struggle mightily to navigate this website. I often can't find things. One issue in particular is how the policies are available on the website. In my opinion, it's very user unfriendly. So I think we have some opportunity for improvement there. Number 5, that we conduct a performance evaluation of the superintendent. Number 6, that we have a social event for the board, by the board, with our families, like a meet and greet, late summertime, outside. Number 7, that we do some work towards developing a 3-year work plan. Number 8, that we do some work towards a 3-year budgeting process. And number 9, it's my favorite. This is a last but not least, institute a meeting end time cap. Say, for example, 9:30, something like that. So those are things that I thought would improve our functioning, would advance the board's objectives, bring the public in a better way, and I wanted to share those. And like I said, I'm hoping that everybody else on the board can share theirs, and over the next couple meetings, we can prioritize and decide what we're going to lift up as our work for this year. Thanks.
So I'll comment on that quick. Appreciate all the work that went into that. I'll take the blame, I guess. I'll pass most of it to COVID, but that is a typical board process. It fell off the table this year. We just flat out didn't get to it because I believe one meeting after you guys got elected, we hit the fan. So, but that is typically something that's done every year. It's typically, I believe, set aside as a separate meeting. And I did, after talking to you about this thing, I took a look, and I believe that our last scheduled meeting was very early, like June 2 or something like that. So what I would like to propose, if everybody's okay with it, is that we, like Amy said, we all take time to develop a list similar to what she did, things that are important to us. But I would propose possibly adding another meeting in June and dedicating it specifically to goals. Where we can combine those lists, prioritize. Not saying we can't discuss it before then at all, but I think that's probably a lengthy discussion, and if we try to add it to a normal agenda, it's gonna make for a very late night. And I also think if we have one meeting dedicated to that, the community, obviously, the community is still welcome to join and listen in and see what we plan to work on, but, you know, I think that the public tends to join these meetings for specific reasons and what's gonna happen, learning model, or if there's something about the sport or whatever. And if they were not inclined to listen to that level of detail, then they would be able to tune out that night. So just a thought, not married to it, but that would be my proposal, is another meeting in June to just specifically focus on that topic.
I think, typically, we've done that before, that's been like just a work session, nothing else. So, the public can join in and watch that work session, but then we, you know, are solely focused on setting our goals, our strategic plan, whatever you want to call it, so.
So as the New Hampshire School Board Associate attending the annual meetings, one thing that's really talked about a lot is about ongoing training for school board members. Our oldest or our most senior, that's the best example, our most senior school board member is in his second term. You know, so we're really trying to figure things out, but I actually support many of the things that Amy mentioned, but I think that it would do us good to maybe contact the New Hampshire School Board and see if they can provide a training for us. It's one thing to come up with a list of to-dos or things we want to do, a wish list, but it's absolutely done unless you have all the pieces. Because we need to have, again, you've heard me talk about SMART goals, and those are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. I would dare say we need some help, and some training would definitely help. So I would absolutely support having another meeting, but I also would really like to have the opportunity to receive training and education from the New Hampshire School Board to guide us in this process. Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up, April. I actually invited Barrett after the election, before all of this happened, to do just that, because it wasn't a board, and Andy and I had spoken about the benefit of having him come and talk to us and see what our needs were. And then he let me know that they were not doing personal trainings any longer, but I don't see, if the board wants me to do that, I'm happy to contact him, let me know that we're still interested in that. I think that's a good idea. The other piece is that the New Hampshire School Board Association staff is not currently providing those, they may be able to provide us with a reference to someone or another entity who is providing us with training. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know they specifically turn some of their trainings into webinars, so it might be something that we can find and do whenever, either as a group or online.
I was just gonna say that, maybe the goals are amazing.
Yeah, I like it. And they're reminiscent of things I know that we've talked about in the past too. And, you know, the thing I know Gene will say it at some point, but we've been talking about some sort of culture type survey for years now too, and that was something that I think was important to both he and I this year, that again, just something that fell off because of everything that went on, but that would definitely be something I'd be interested in getting more into. So, Amy, are you comfortable with that approach of us kind of making our lists and making a dedicated work session in June to hammer that out?
Yes, I'm also all for the training, and I see those things as two things, not one or the other.
Agreed. So then I think I would say, and again, I'll open it up to you, but I think especially if we're going to get in contact with Barrett, I would lean on him a little bit too, as far as superintendent goals too. I think that would be, we're in an interesting situation, obviously. Patty works for the SAU. So as far as a specific performance program, that's the SAU board's purview. But I think as one of her districts, it's appropriate for us to discuss goals for her as well. And I think, again, we're not experts in that. If Barrett can give us some guidance, I'd be all ears. Hey, was there anything specific you wanted to go in on that, superintendent piece?
At some of the prior SU meetings, we were discussing the superintendents come up with their goals, because their review's coming up. So I just wanted to just put it out there that it's something that we should be working on.
Yeah, and I think the timeframe would be good too. Same thing in June, end of the year, gives us all some time to think about it and get some stuff down on paper. And then it's, fresh start for the summer and through the school year. And I think all that makes good sense. I'm thoroughly looking forward to getting back to typical board visits. It will be welcome for sure. Anything else on that, Amy, before we move on?
No, good, thank you, guys.
So 7E and elections. I remember you asked me that. I don't remember what. Sorry.
Just for the elections, I want to ask and basically point out, when we have the elections in March, it is town and school. So I know that the selectmen need to stay and sign the boxes on the ballots. And so April pointed out that they also need to be done on the school sign. So I just want to put it in our radar for next March, that at least 3 signatures need to be done by the school board. The second thing is the moderator, the school moderator. It's only 1-year term. So I know Tom probably forgot about it for this evening, but to extend it to at least 2 years. Because by the time we vote the person in, and by the time we come to the election, there's a lot of courses that they need to attend to run the meeting. So that was something that we could look at extending, instead of just 1-year term, have 2. And the last thing was the ballots. The town pays for all the ballots for the school and the town. And the school ballot, we have to physically count every single ballot. So we would like to suggest that the school go to a more digital ballot like the town has. So the machine will actually read it. We won't need to have 20, 30 people counting all these ballots and come up with the numbers quicker. Because they've already been there from 11 o'clock in the morning till later.
Yeah, I will fess up. The night of the elections, I was there, and April reminded me that those things needed to be signed by school board members, and I told her I would do it. And I was texting back and forth with my wife, and my phone battery died. And I thought, crap, I gotta go. And I completely forgot about it, and I walked right in. But that's a good note. I have no idea how moderator works. Is that a state thing, or is that something we control, or?
I don't think we control it, but I will certainly look into it a little bit more. And I think the school district clerk would be the one that we would need to speak to about the ballots too. So I'm not sure who. I know the town is responsible for the election piece, but you're talking about at the school district meeting or the March elections? You're talking about the Saturday meeting or the
March.
meeting? Okay.
Yeah, if we could have the ballots more digital, because the town pays for that printing.
Yeah.
So it'd be quicker and less volunteers needed.
Yeah, I'll ask Kathy to reach out to Cindy and start exploring that.
Thank you.
I think that brings us to 7. Oh, sorry, my bad.
Under elections, I'm not sure if we ever had a, we postponed at some point, I'm not sure if the board took action on the town having future elections at Pembroke Academy. Was further action ever taken on that? We approved it for November
March, that's it.
and March.
March of 2021. We haven't voted. We only voted up until March of 2021. We haven't voted going forward.
I'd like to make a motion that the Pembroke School District allow the town of Pembroke to utilize Pembroke Academy for upcoming election purposes.
I'll second.
No discussion.
Well, I don't disagree with the motion. I think before we move forward on this, maybe we should look to the other towns in the area before we make a decision like that, because it does impact their students. They have to shut down the school for a day during the school year. Now, that could possibly be worked out with the scheduling like it did this year, but I think that was an in-service thing, right? So, I think that's something that forward, we should have a further conversation that this is something we're going to do. Take back that input from them.
There's only one district in the area that does have school on that day.
Sorry.
There is only one school district in the area that has school on that day. All the other districts shut their schools down for that day, for voting purposes, and they use their schools as voting.
For discussion purposes, I would say it's up to the school district or superintendent, or ultimately the school board decides on the calendar, and we could approve the professional development day or SAU training-wide training day or election day. That's something that happens on a cyclical basis, and that's an easy workaround for me. So to me, that doesn't compromise this. Part of this is, I think, the proven success, even with the extra precautions taken this year, all the positive feedback that we have heard about the election being held here in this building. Thank you.
I think I agree with everything. But yeah, I guess I would not support this tonight, simply for kind of what Jane said. I'd like to hear more of what Patty and Dr. Morris have to say about it, and it wasn't, something that was really on the agenda tonight to discuss, so I'd like to give them some time to prepare, possibly run it by ARA schools. And I think, like Ann said, we approved for March 2022.
And we only approved it for 2020.
So, but we've still got, I can't count, but 8 months, 10 months, something like that before we have to do another one. So, while I would certainly support approving that, I'd like a little more time.
Our headmaster and superintendent are here, so could we ask them their opinions tonight instead of postponing hearing their opinions?
We can, if they feel prepared to do this one.
I think I feel prepared, but honestly, I don't know what I don't know at this point. And the benefit of waiting is that we can all have conversations. What I can tell you is that we have traditionally had that March day off, as you mentioned, we use it as an SAU-wide professional development day. And historically, we've hosted that here, so all the districts have come here, and we've used all the classrooms and broken out into different rooms. So I want to hear, I want to talk to Josh and find out what that looks like and what it would look like if we didn't have this space. And I don't know that we typically have that second election day off, do we? Yeah, so we usually have school on that day. So I think those are things that it would be great if we could just think about it and put it on the next agenda and talk about, just time to think about it. If that's okay, because we have a while.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that it has gone well here. It's gone well here because of the work of the town and the work of Josh and his crew. My caveat all along has been that I'm really uncomfortable having voting here while we are trying to conduct a school day. So as long as we can navigate that, then that looks good to me on this end. Just, might be have to make sure that that's not too impactful on the school calendar, that's all.
Any questions, comments?
Can we call the question?
April had her hand up right before you said that, so let her
Oh,
respond.
sorry.
Sure, my only point is to remind the board that the board sets the calendar for the school district. And so it is within our power to plan accordingly for elections. Thank you.
All right, so there's a motion and a second to approve elections for the town of Pembroke to use PA for town elections henceforth.
Well, it wasn't limited to town elections, it was elections.
Elections,
So it would include national.
On a roll call vote, Amy,
No.
Ann,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Jean,
No.
and I'm a no. It fails for now, but again, I would completely support that with a little bit more prep time.
And you can ask the question.
Absolutely.
If we could put it on the agenda for the next meeting and have a list of who is going to get what information. So I would be in charge of X, Patty would be in charge of Y, Mr. Morris would be in charge of whatever. Thank you.
I guess the question, the next meeting is 2 weeks out, would that give you enough time to get that information together?
I think so. Part of the collective bargaining agreement does require us to consult with the NEA, every year when we, or the EAP when we do our school calendar. So I, just off the top of my head, I want to look at how many PD days we have and where they've typically been, because I think we have one in December because it matches up with parent conferences at the end of the trimester. So it's just those little glitchy things that I just want to talk through and ask questions about, and we should be able to have answers in 2 weeks.
I mean, this year we don't have to worry about November, so that's not an issue. So, we can do that and then maybe roll it out, extend it more if we don't have all the information at the next meeting. I'm agreeing with the sentiment and the idea, because it did work well, but I just want to make sure that everybody's on board equally.
Then item number 7F is the current year fiscal update.
So currently we have a surplus of $2,378.
Anything that we see on the horizon? It sounds like most of the COVID stuff we've gotten grants for. Anything that we unexpected number of retirements to pay out, anything crazy like that we foresee?
No, I think it's been really consistent. I feel good about the number. It's not changed a whole lot. We've been able to, spend our supply lines. We've got everything we need. Anything that we can, that's new and not included in the budget that was related to COVID, we use grant funds whenever we possibly can. And then as requested, we have on here another bullet for end of year projects because we want to talk about that with Josh. But other than that, I think we're in really good shape.
Any general questions?
Thank you. Josh had concerns about items that would not be passed if they were not passed at the election. So are we looking to use some of that surplus money on some of the maintenance things that you said were really very important to get done?
So to answer that, and yes, I sent an email a while back. I'm not sure if it made it into your drive, but I believe it did. So it was really talking about items that we kind of took out of the budget, or more so took out of the warrant articles, for items that we had labeled to be completed for next year, which in my world, a lot of that just means this coming summer. We have a 6 to 10 week time frame to get a lot of things done. It takes some prep to get there. So when we asked those, that was the list I said, for lack of a better word. So items on that would be our replacement flooring that we've built the system we do every year. A roof replacement here at Pembroke Academy. That roof is long past its expected life expectancy. It's showing significant signs of failure. We spend significant time up there within my department fixing and patching, and we're spending significant time with our contractors having them fix it and patch it, and it's not working, for lack of a better words. It's past its life. One thing we built in a couple of years ago is we never really had an exterior painting plan within the district. We've started instituting that. So that's on the list. Replacement cameras are on the list, or more so some additions, which would be some blind spots that come up every year that allow us to grow our system. And lastly, for what I would call the big ticket warrant items would be a zero turn mower. So ours is about 6-7 years old at this point. And as much as we would keep that one in cycle, it's shown the signs of failure. We've been down without it at times. And as much as we have backups, whenever we're down and lower of that substance, it's a pretty big burden on the crew. So those were the warrant items that we were not moving forward with this year. Other items that we took out of the budget, which I would call the project stuff, were the asbestos abatements. The asbestos abatements, we started abating some of our flooring in particular a couple of years ago. We built a good system where we felt like we were on the right path to not necessarily get it all removed out of our buildings, but to start that process, which takes a significant amount of time with the age of our buildings. So we took that out of the budget line where that was built in. That's not as easy as you guys saying, okay, Josh, here's $10. Go get that done in the summer because of the timing and the planning that's involved with that. But that will be as easy as saying, here's $10. We can allocate it. We can get it under contract and we can be ready to go next year on something like that because of the time frame that's involved with that. We also took out some water fountains. We had started a plan of instituting or installing the water fill stations everywhere. If anything COVID has shown us on that side is those are so important. We were doing a couple a year. We're down to 4 of them in the district, 4 replacements. Those were in next year's budget that we took out of when that time came. Some portable walls, they've proven very beneficial, specifically at the Hill School. They come to me every year, and whether it's Wendy or Susie or anybody before that, is we want a wall here. The next year they don't want that wall there, and they want it moved over here. So we really have the portable walls have worked well for us. It allows them to not only change yearly, it allows them to change daily, depending on whatever the crisis is that they need to redo their room, for lack of better words. We also took out some fencing at 3 Rivers. Fencing in particular with a lot of our stuff is the price is up. COVID has just really shot everything through the roof. So the fencing's up. We might not be able to accomplish as much as we wanted should we get some fencing money. But fencing specifically we have the backstops being done this year. We kind of budgeted last year for softball field to be done once and then baseball field to be done twice. Well, because of the cost raises or with the product, we had to fine tune that and do it a little bit different. So I would just kind of label that as fencing. And here at Pembroke Academy, we have specifically the window air conditioning units that are failing us pretty regularly. We were able to kind of stabilize that a year or 2 ago, and we're trying to get ahead of some of those as well. So that's a lot in a nutshell, but a little bit of what the warrants we took out that we're not proceeding with to the taxpayers, and then stuff coming out of the budget as well. That would be what I call our project line.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Are you looking for any action on that, or is that seemed informational?
It's up to you if you want to just think about that, if you wanted to put a list together with the prices and you can kind of prioritize or pick and choose. I think we're pretty stable in our surplus right now, so if you're ready, I think you can start considering.
Yeah, I mean,
we can put it together for the next meeting.
yeah, I guess if you can put some at least rough prices on those, and I guess if you could prioritize the list first, and bring it back to us, and I mean, with $1 million surplus, and you all know what that can do as far as tax rate fluctuation. I'm inclined to say, let's go ahead and do this stuff, but
it's all a priority.
Yeah. Right. And to be honest, that's why I say I would probably be in favor of this, because I live in dread of another one of our buildings becoming a village school. And so maintenance is important. But yeah, if you can prioritize and get us some dollar amounts, then we can take action and see everybody comfortable doing that next time around.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of meeting business. So moving on to I'm not sure, is Ryan on the phone by any chance? Nope. Okay, so we'll skip to Zach. And then is busy. She's not able to be started up. So exec board, do you have any on that one?
The exec board, the.
Thanks, Pete.
I was looking down, sorry. The exec board, at the last meeting, they were just going over, some of the items, they purchasing the town clock plus, time clock plus. And they were going over each district when they were going back into class. So they, the majority of them are, full back in, with just a little bit prior to us. And they also had issues with the drivers and a lot of policies they were going through and discussed. So it was a pretty good meeting.
Thank you. AREA.
I'll take that. The most recent AREA meeting was on March 10th, and at that point we had the school district and SAU attorney Dean Eggert attend, and we did a presentation on amending an AREA agreement. We found that very useful. He also provided us with a printed document. So if you don't have one, you might want to get your hands on one. I found it very insightful, and it was pretty much the presentation. So I would say get your hands on the presentation if you can. We did agree that you would also send us the slides so that there was a lot of information in those slides. I thought it was very helpful. Thank you.
Has he done that yet?
I'm making a note to ask him though. Fantastic, thank you.
Budget committee, pretty much same as last time, no updates, meeting's coming up on May 1st. As we discussed tonight, I think I mentioned last time, but in case I didn't, Mark Bates, chair of the budget committee, has indicated that he wants to do kind of a wrap-up session, for lack of a better term, so sometime after the May meeting, get the budget committee back together one more time, talk about what didn't this time around. That's a great idea. It's about it for budget. Anything on case? Amy?
Nope, case has not met.
The renovation committee, kind of already mentioned that earlier. I think Mr. Foss indicated that they're pretty well ready to present. He has offered to come a couple of times and I've pushed him off either because it is the first meeting after the election or this tonight doesn't have the agenda. But I expect sometime in the next 2 to 3 meetings, maybe we will have that presentation. And that brings us to, oh, sorry.
And do you have any information about if the field reno committee report is currently available for us to kind of read and consume so that we can prepare for the presentation, maybe with any questions we might have? If so, it'd be great to get that to us.
As someone on the committee, we have just received the final draft version. We have not had meetings since to review it, but I would imagine that it will be available soon.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the individual reports. Start with Dr. Morris. Oh, pass the microphone.
Thanks. Okay. As if you'll look behind you, you'll see some 2 whiteboards mounted on the wall there. The reason for that is we are expanding our Pembroke Academy Hall of Fame. The expansion is being done by our woodworking class, and they're doing a great job. And we need to expand this because we are inducting 2 new members at convocation this year. So the first inductee will be Bruce Dyke, a Chichester resident and a member of the class of 1984, who, after a very successful career in the technology field, has also been a longtime supporter of Pembroke Academy, and also gives 2 scholarships to seniors every year, and has done that for quite some time now. The second inductee will be a name many of you may be familiar with, Dave Kelly, who is a longtime, since retired, but a longtime Pembroke Academy faculty member and the founder of Pembroke Academy Robotics. So they were both very pleased to get word of their nomination and approval, and we are looking forward to inducting them in June, early June. We also have 4 Pembroke Academy seniors, as well as 4 Three Rivers students who are going to be keynote presenters as part of a student panel at the New Hampshire School Administrators Association's Innovations in Education Conference tomorrow morning. Really looking forward to that. It's a virtual conference, and so they actually walk around a virtual campus and then go into a virtual. It's kind of a weird situation, but I'm really looking forward to it. I think that they're going to represent both schools very well and highlight some of the hard work that their teachers have been doing to be creative through this whole experience. Other than that, I went over my reentry information that I talked about earlier, so that one stole some of my thunder. So that's what I got for tonight.
Questions for Dr. Morris?
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's see, athletics started this spring. We've got softball and baseball that started up. Our numbers are down, but we do have enough to hopefully stay on the field. So that we were a little worried at first, but we certainly have enough to get started. So that's good. We are we're in the process of talking about our end of our activity in the year activities. Honestly, we've been so busy trying to get everybody back that we've those things are going to have to wait to get everybody. We've got a few things on the that are coming up that we're going to be able to do at the end of the year. We also, some of you may remember, may not remember, there is a project that I've been working on for I don't know how long now in the backyard. I've been talking with Josh a little bit about moving some dirt around and a few other things to start trying to get that moving again. And I'll give you more specifics about that, but it's basically a discovery area. We had a PA come down and build a outdoor classroom a few years ago. I've got a wall area that we Josh's crew came down and really the great place for kids to play. We've got a couple of picnic areas. Now I want to fitness area for kids. As you know, all that costs money, and we have to get a site plan first, and then we'll do that, and then we'll just so that's exciting. It's just taking a really long time to get this going, but I'm stubborn. So hopefully we'll get it soon. Other than that, like Dan, we said a lot about our reopening, and we're excited to get it going.
Questions about the area?
Just a couple of quick things I wanted to add about our reentry, bringing kids in. One of the things is we are going to stop our temperature checks. We've been doing them, but at this point, they have not given us a red flag on anything. The most important thing is the community screening and our nurse following up with anybody who is absent. At this point, the temperature screening is pretty much just slow everything down and don't play any role in kind of determining what's going on with the kiddos. We did today go through our remote wait list. Anybody who had contacted us about wanting to come hybrid and have those on deck to start on the 19th. So we've cleared all of those, any parents that contacted us directly. And then another quick thing that we're excited about is we've had a kindergarten remote going on for the entire year. It's at 12 students right now. More than half have expressed interest in coming in the building. So we worked with our kindergarten teacher who's taken that on and are going to bring that class in, the students that want to full time, and then she is going to live stream kindergarten for the remaining that choose to stay remote. So that will also start on the 19th. So we just wanted to get more kids in the building, and there was a large population. She's very excited about it. Kindergarten live stream, so we'll see how that goes. But I've really been amazed. They've done an amazing job this year. The kids are phenomenal, and so it's a staff with that. A couple of fun things going on. Similar to John, we're trying to use some of our outdoor space, so we're starting to, our high lab teacher, Ms. Jones, is starting to identify some outdoor classroom spaces in conjunction. We had a committee meet about outdoor classrooms to see what it is that we could do to utilize the space out there. So they're starting to identify trails and some areas that they can kind of create those outdoor areas. And then another thing we're working on is really looking into the summer and creating a summer program for our students. We want to do a heavy focus on social emotional learning as well as academic support. You know, a lot of the kids haven't had a chance to socialize, you know, other than every other day. So those are some of the things that we're working on. This would be in addition to our ESY program, not just part of ESY, but in addition to that. So those are just some of the things that we're working on right now.
Questions for me? Fantastic, thank you all.
Question, sorry.
Sorry.
Just a clarification question. I heard summer program for social emotional learning and academics in addition to ESY. ESY is extended school years for students with individual education programs. Correct. Clarification. Will you come to us with more information about funding of this summer program?
Absolutely, that's going to be part of what we're doing with the ESSER 2 grant. Is they allowed us to use that money for social emotional academic remediation support. We're also hoping to close gaps and also fill some of the social gaps the kids have had this year over the summer.
And part of that plan will also include transportation for students.
That's some of the things that we're looking into, absolutely.
Okay.
Once I meet with the staff, once you kind of create that plan and kind of check a couple more boxes, I'll bring the details to you guys.
Thank you.
If I could add to April, we did talk to our food service director and told her that if we had students here for an extended period of time, that since we're doing the free lunch programs, we're hoping to send them home or give them a lunch while they're with us. So that would be an added bonus of the program.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to number 9, which is policy. We've got a stack of them. Most of them are not been here too long.
I'd like to make a motion that we table the 15 policies that we have on our agenda. The reason for this request is because on February 2nd, the school board adopted policy BGA, policy development system. Part of that policy includes manuals to be provided to each board member. I definitely have not received a manual. I'm not sure who has. It would make it a lot different, like a lot easier to do our jobs if we did have that manual to look at these policies instead of individually having to look up the current policy and compare it to the one we're being asked to review. Thank you.
So that's, you just let me know what you want me to do. We did away with paper manuals many years ago. We used to have binders that were probably 2 sets of really big binders. We used to have 1 copy at the SAU office. In writing, it is in your policy. So if that's what you want us to do, then we can start working on that. But we would have to go into each policy and print them singularly, and it would be, they're huge. They would be huge manuals. So if people want a paper copy and that's what the board decides, I can start working on it, but I don't know how quickly Kathy would be able to get it done. It would be a big chore.
I think this is a, I definitely would like that paper copy. I work better on paper than electronic, especially when you, I would like to request that paper copy. It is in our policy. I know I particularly work better on paper, when I have 2 things to compare instead of on an electronic screen. And I would support having that manual as been approved by the school board. Thank you.
Just a suggestion, could we, so the recommendation for JLI is to draw the policy, because for the writer policy, let's take that out.
Which one, Andy?
JLI is the last one under second reading. It's now covered by EBB. But
I was just going to go back. I thought you were going to keep talking about the manual. I just want to be clear how many people, if there are people that don't want it, I don't want to make an extra copy of it. So just let me know who. Ann, April. Amy, did you want one?
Amy, can you read?
Sorry, just as you get to the mute button, no, thank you.
Okay, so just two. Okay, thank you. I would feel comfortable with moving forward with removing JLI. Since and this is very helpful, by the way, on the agenda to say when we approve the previous policy. So yes.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we withdraw policy JLI, your School Association, because it's now covered under policy EBD. Second. Gene second, is there any discussion around that one? Okay, and we'll vote to withdraw policy JLI, joint policy management. Amy?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Gene?
Yes.
And I'm yes. If we want to wait on the rest of these, I think that's okay, but I think Patty indicated that we take some time to get those big things printed. So if we can try to at least look at the ones that are third and second reading tonight for next time around, if possible. If we can tick some of those off, that would be good. Otherwise, our stacks going to get okay again. Is that acceptable to you, Patty?
Yes, and the policies that you have for first reading, a lot of them are up to be withdrawn, so we can talk about those at the next meeting. It should be quick.
Everybody okay with that? Excellent. Okay. It's also 9:30, so not really 15 policies is okay. All right, informational items. Number 10 on the agenda. Anything? So that brings us to our second public comment section, but we have no public left, so we will bypass that. You've got a thing All right, so we did have requests to enter non-public session. In accordance with New Hampshire RSA 91-A:3, small letter, Roman numeral 2, small letter C, which is matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect the diversity and reputation of any person other than a member of. Roll call vote non-public at 9:29 p.m. Amy?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Gene? Yes. And I'm yes. So, agenda item number 13, appointments, resignations, and retirements, we have nothing. And so, I'll take this to adjourn.
Wait, Andy, before you go, do we need to specify that there's no action taken during the non-public section?
That's a good idea. Yes, there was no action. Thank you. There's no action taken during non-public. Also, note once, just, I believe it was mentioned before, but just for transparency, we do have a non-meeting after this meeting, which is a strange thing, but it always has to do with negotiations.
And the next meeting is
And the next meeting is April 20th at 6:30.
in person?
Yep, so this will be the plan going forward until something changes one way or the other. Not to say we might not learn from audio and different things on here and adjust a little bit, but in general, the plan will be to be in person and broadcast to the public.
Before we go to just a question, is it possible to get more of these?
Yes, we definitely.
That's what I was just.
How much are they? And
I was just gonna mention that before you asked, Josh did order the components that we need. So this was our way tonight to try to stream this so people could watch it, but understanding that this is probably not the best quality. But the component parts that I showed you that Josh was ordering, I think there's gonna be like 8 or 10 microphones. So when all that comes in, I'm hoping that this will all work much more smoothly, but I hope that these people were able to get some of the meeting tonight. We tried to provide some access.
Awesome. I'm recording it, so.
If that's not in by next meeting, can we get a PTA? Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so now let's have to move to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
second,
At 9:45, I will call a vote. Ian?
Yes.
Ian?
yes.
April?
Yes.
Andy? Yes. Right. Thank you
I never
very much.
told you.
So we're gonna have, the next, our next agenda is the